Chapter 3953. Looks like Lil Luo Air was really frightened last night. Next time he had to control himself. Frighten Lil Luo Er for a long time to come. Lil Luo Er would probably not let him touch her. Dmo Xian's eyes were filled with smiles as he leaned over and kissed her lips. It made the young girl's pale face blush. Only then did he release the girl's lips and let her go. I promise next time I will be gentler. His laughter was low and hoarse as he reached out to pull the robe by the side and helped Yiqing Luo change into it. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as she lifted her leg to kick the man. Do you still want a next time? Don't even think about it. Her feet were covered by the man's broad palm. Then he pulled with all his might. Her delicate body fell into the man's arms. The man skillfully and gently helped her get dressed. Then he carried her off the bed. Next to him, toiletries were already prepared. Yiqing Luo didn't want to move as she completed a series of actions to wake up under Dmo Xian's care. She had deliberately splashed the water on the man several times. He didn't even look the slightest bit displeased. His actions were still as gentle as ever as he helped her wipe away the water. Working hard without complaint, not retaliating when hit, not rebutting when scolded, made Yiqing Luo feel much better. The expression on his face softened a little. In such a sweet atmosphere, the room was filled with pink bubbles. Yiqing Luo dressed neatly and walked out of the room. She rejected Dmo Xian's request to carry her all the way. When she woke up, it was already noon. If she allowed Dmo Xian to carry her out, wasn't this clearly telling everyone? What did she and Dmo Xian do last night? Moreover, his entire body was sore and limp. If he didn't move, he would die. She would only feel worse. Yiqing Luo left the room and was pulled by Dmo Xian to the main hall. Piping hot dishes had already been prepared in the hall. Yiqing Luo rubbed her tummy as she snorted coldly at Dmo Xian. At least he knew his place. He knew that she was exhausted last night. Now she knew that he had taken good care of her every little bit. Amen. Yiqing Luo was like a tsundere little princess as she took her seat. After a while, Lao Lai heard that she had woken up and rushed over. After seeing the table full of delicacies, he reached out and grabbed the table. As he grabbed, he said, Madame D, I've been waiting for you for so long just now. Lord, what are you doing? His hand had yet to reach over. It was caught between two chopsticks. It was Di Zun. That cold gaze and the strength of the chopsticks sent chills down old Lai's spine. He immediately retracted his hand and shrunk it into his chest. He was filled with grief and indignation. Di Zun, these were specially prepared for Di Foreign. If you don't want me to touch them, just tell me. Why do you have to be so cruel? Dmo Xian did not even cast a glance at him. Throwing the wooden chopsticks aside, he picked up a new pair of chopsticks and started to serve Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo took a look at the aggrieved old Lai as she ate the food which Dmo Xian sent to her mouth and said, What did you say earlier? Is there something urgent you need me for? Holding his hand, Lao Lai looked at the noble and elegant Di Zun who was feeding the girl. Then he looked at his swollen hand. They were all humans, but why was there such a huge difference between them? Pei Sheng is looking for you. He said that today is the first auction of the treasure gathering and he hopes that you can be present. Lao Lai said in an aggrieved tone. Wearing that horrifying old face, he used such an aggrieved tone. Yiqing Luo felt her hair stand on end. She had just shivered. Chapter 3954. Lao Lai immediately stood up straight, his hands hanging on both sides. Yiqing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand and looked at old Lai. Pei Sheng intends to hold an auction today? Old Lai still stood straight. Yes. This morning Pei Sheng came to invite you, but Lord Di Zun stopped him. Yiqing Luo nodded. I'll head over after I finish eating. Old Lai took a look at Dmo Xian and his body flashed towards the door. I've already conveyed the message. I'll go to the treasure gathering exchange first. All of you take your time to eat. His vigorous posture made it impossible to tell that he was an old man over 50 years old. Eat slowly, there's no hurry. Dmo Xian sent the food to her mouth. We'll go over later. Yiqing Luo looked at the table full of delicacies. She knew that these were meticulously prepared by Dmo Xian. If she did not savor it properly, she would be letting down Dmo Xian's heart. Over at treasure gathering, even though the auction started in the morning, it will also last until night. She was in no hurry. Therefore, it was already half an hour later before he could comfortably fill his stomach. Yiqing Luo had just stood up and was preparing to head over to the treasures exchange hall with Dmo Xian. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in front of them in a flash. It was a cold-looking man about 25 or 26 years old. His face was solemn and he looked very much like an old cadre. Just one look and Yiqing Luo was able to guess this person's identity. Tang Beiyuan's fiancé, Lang Li Xian. Why is he here? When Dmo Xian saw Lang Li Xian, a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Lang Li Xian took a look at Yiqing Luo and walked quickly towards Dmo Xian as he whispered something into his ear. Dmo Xian's expression sunk slightly. From the corner of his eyes, he shot a glance at Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo understood and smiled. If you have something to do, go ahead first. After all, Dmo Xian was an emperor of the imperial palace and his status in the upper realm was not ordinary. Naturally, there were many miscellaneous matters that required his attention. Yiqing Luo wasn't a lady who pestered endlessly. When it was time to act coquettishly, she would do so. Be rational when you need to be rational. Dmo Xian pursed his lips slightly. The auction? There's still old Lai and the rest at the auction, so I'll head over alone. Yiqing Luo replied. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and hugged Yiqing Luo as he lowered his head and planted a kiss on her forehead. I will be back as soon as possible, wait for me tonight. When Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, the man was nowhere to be seen. She looked at the horizon for a long time and sighed. The first auction of the treasure-gathering hall was extremely lively. Qiao family had even specially rented a place for Pei Xing to play around, because of the disruption of the previous auction. The commotion of the treasure-gathering auction this time was not much different from the auction fair. The big shots of many forces came to keep watch. It was impossible to tell that before the auction, the treasures-gathering trading house was a trading house that no one cared about and had almost closed down. Yiqing Luo didn't want to cause too much of a commotion in case those big shots took turns to chat awkwardly. She specially adjusted her hairstyle and makeup, and also wore a veil to cover her face. Although his aura had weakened quite a bit, but it still couldn't hide her stunning beauty. Yiqing Luo had just walked out of the auction house and was about to enter. Suddenly a number of ladies bumped into her from behind. They were chattering as fragrant powder was scattered all over. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she evaded the lady when she bumped into her. Chapter 3955. The ladies fell onto the ground as they immediately cried out, ouch ouch ouch. All of them were like weak willows swaying in the wind, swaying their waists as they climbed up from the ground. Following that, they swarmed over to help up the disheveled lady who had fallen right at the bottom. After helping the man up, Jianghu said. A lady who looked extremely pampered stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. Don't you have eyes? What did you bump into? Can you afford to offend our sacred lady? Hearing a sharp voice, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but frowned as she cast a sidelong glance over. She didn't want to create trouble at the first round of the auction, so she didn't bother about their baffling bumping over. This group of people actually had the cheek to criticize her? Sacred lady? Yiqing Luo's first thought was Qiao family's. Qiao Yulu, who had died in the auction. Qiao Yulu had just died not too long ago. Linglong Palace had already arranged for a new sacred lady to arrive at without embroiling city so quickly. The 6 ladies in front of her, all of their looks were considered top-notch and the dresses they were wearing were luxurious and dignified. She could tell that they were all young missies from extremely well-off families. When the lady saw that Yiqing Luo didn't have any reaction towards their reprimands and even sized them up, they were so infuriated that their faces turned red. Slut! What are you looking at? Are we people that a lowly person like you can look at directly? Another lady echoed, That's right, don't you know what status you have, to actually dare to stand at the entrance of the auction house? Who doesn't know that today is the first round of the auction house and various powerhouses will be there to support us? A lady covered her mouth as she laughed sarcastically. A lady intentionally standing here in a flirtatious manner? What else could it be for? The few of them looked at Yiqing Luo with eyes filled with ridicule. Yiqing Luo glanced at them indifferently and retracted her gaze, not bothering to bother about this bunch of retards. She lifted her feet and walked towards the auction house. She had just turned around when the ladies behind her rushed up and blocked her path. Slut! Offending our sacred lady and still trying to escape? The ladies' faces were filled with ridicule, with a playful smile. Apparently they had treated Yiqing Luo as a toy which could serve as a foil for their status. Enough! A sweet-sounding voice suppressed the mockery of the few people. Soon after, the woman surrounded by the 5 women, the Holy Virgin, slowly walked over. The woman was dressed in a white robe and had a white veil over her face. She looked like an ethereal fairy. Her attire was very similar to Qiao Yulu's. Did she think that, by imitating Qiao Yulu, she would be able to become Qiao Yulu? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly, as she calmly looked at the approaching figure of the woman. The veil hid the impatience on her lips. His half-squinted eyes gave off a sharp feeling. The sharpness of the blade made the woman feel an indescribable chill run through her entire body as she walked over. The lady's willowy brows creased as she suspiciously sized up Yiqing Luo. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't associate that chill with the young girl in front of him. Saintess, this bitch is obviously a vixen. I think she must have heard that the Overlord would come to the auction today, so she purposely waited here. Chapter 3956. The arrogant lady's voice wasn't considered soft. Yiqing Luo was closer, so she naturally heard what she said. When she heard the words, Overlord, her brows couldn't help but rose. Did they just say, Xian? This lady who was addressed as Sacred Maiden was specially here to meet Xian? It was just a slight change in expression. But it was seen clearly by those ladies. One of the ladies immediately pointed at her and shouted, Look! When she heard the Overlord's name, her eyes lit up. She's indeed here to seduce the Overlord. Slut. Who do you think you are? The Overlord will only belong to our Sacred Maiden. The arrogant lady ridiculed and was delighted. This bunch of ladies, their mouths were really unforgiving. It was a barrage of words. There wasn't any intention to control their voices. It attracted the attention of the passers-by. This was the first auction of the treasure-gathering hall, and also the last auction of the treasure-gathering hall. Those who came and went were all people with extremely high statuses. It was extremely rare to hear such a scene of people scolding and pestering endlessly on the streets. Originally they didn't want to bother about it. However, when he heard those women calling him His Majesty and Saintess again and again, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. This made quite a number of people stop in their tracks as they crowded around. Some powerhouses' big shots recognized those few ladies. Those ladies were all from the Earth Realm and were the daughters of the top-ranked large clans. Among the large clans, their reputation was extremely good. To be able to make these noble young ladies flock to her. What kind of status did she have? Everyone sized up these few ladies as their eyes were filled with probing. But no one interfered in this matter. Seeing the surrounding big shots crowding around, those ladies didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, they felt even more interested. Especially that arrogant lady, her chest puffed out even more and her waist straightened even more. The Overlord is still waiting for our Sacred Maiden to meet up. He doesn't have the leisure to waste time with you here. Saying that, she arrogantly commanded, Slut, earlier you've offended the Sacred Maiden. Kneel down and apologize to us and we'll forgive your offense. Yiqing Luo, where did this severely retarded patient come from? Hurry and drag her back. Such a stupid and retarded way. Didn't she feel ashamed? Could it be that he didn't notice? The way the big bosses looked at them was definitely not supportive of their actions, right? Was he retarded or blind? In the face of this kind of trouble with a weak battle, Yiqing Luo didn't even want to bother about him. However, what made her slightly curious was whether the Overlord they were talking about was the same person as her Xian. Slut, are you scared silly? The arrogant woman shouted for some time but didn't see any response from Yiqing Luo, so she raised her hand and pushed Yiqing Luo. Just as he moved, his wrist was locked by Yiqing Luo. Crack. The bones in the woman's wrist were broken. The arrogant woman let out a blood-curdling scream and withdrew her hand. Ew. How dare you? Yiqing Luo's action made those complacent ladies' atmosphere congeal as pairs of penetrating eyes stared over. Yiqing Luo took out her handkerchief and wiped her hand which she had touched earlier. Every strand of hair was carefully wiped. It was as if he had touched the plague. Then he threw the handkerchief on the ground. Following that, he raised his head slightly and looked at the few people in front of him. Yiqing Luo's brows were suffused with a faint smile. That smile was very cold. There was a kind of sharp feeling. Chapter 3957. Oh, you want me to apologize? Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her voice was clear. Even though she was wearing a veil, her side profile was still breathtakingly beautiful. Yiqing Luo's actions, coupled with her obvious provocative reply, made the lady's expressions sunk one by one. The lady squinted her eyes. Do you know who we are? How dare you make a move in front of Sacred Maiden? Do you believe that as long as our Sacred Maiden opens her mouth to the Overlord will make your life worse than death? After saying this, the lady even held onto Sacred Maiden's arm tightly in protest. Sacred Maiden's beautiful eyes squinted slightly as her gaze turned icy cold. Apparently, she was extremely dissatisfied with Yiqing Luo's action of making her lose face in front of everyone. But Yiqing Luo's expression didn't even change. Her eyes were curved, still that mischievous arc. Oh? Overlord? Yi Qing Luo's voice was light and carried a sliver of suspicion. The overlord you mentioned, is it the overlord that I know of? The lady's expressions turned extremely ugly. Are you trying to say that we intentionally used the overlord to cheat you? Hey, who do you think you are? Are you worthy for us to cheat you? There is only one overlord in this world. The overlord we are talking about is naturally the most mysterious overlord in the upper realm, Diamo Xian. Do you know what relationship our sacred maiden has with the overlord? If we say it out, you'll be scared to death. The ladies were all talking at once as they sneered. Each and every one of them were arrogant, as though they could use the prestige of overlord to do whatever they wanted. Whereas that sacred maiden who was being complimented by everyone had not stopped them from the start, nor did she open her mouth to explain. She had a tacit attitude. This made the various powerhouses' big shots unable to bear it when they heard this sentence. Overlord? And the sacred maiden? Overlord and Imperial Madam's relationship is so good, how could there possibly be a third person? If she has no relationship with the overlord, how would she dare to speak out the overlord's name in front of everyone? You must know that the overlord and Imperial Madam are still in the Earth realm. The boss of the treasure-gathering hall is Imperial Madam's friend, so Imperial Madam and the overlord will definitely come to the auction today. If Imperial Madam bumped into these few people, perhaps even the entire family would be implicated. The surrounding voices made the women's faces turn even uglier. However, he was surrounded by big shots. No matter how angry he was, no matter how much he wanted to refute, he still suppressed his emotions. Yi Qing Luo laughed out when she heard those people's discussions. Her smile caused the hateful gazes of the women to instantly fall on her. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you people are so bored. Every time you catch a person you think he's here for Lord Dizun? Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly, the corners of her eyes curved, narrow and mischievous. So, it's you guys who are feeling guilty. Who's guilty? The arrogant woman's face turned pale. She held her broken hand and stared at her fiercely. Our Holy Virgin is here to meet His Majesty. Yi Qing Luo smiled without saying a word. In the eyes of the women, that smile was a mockery and provocation. They were so angry that their eyes turned red. At this moment, suddenly the crowd was filled with lively chatter. Boss Pei, why are you here personally? Boss Pei, long time no see. Congratulations. Chapter 3958. As the greetings rang, everyone's gaze immediately shifted from the ladies towards Pei Sheng, who had just walked out of the auction house. Pei Sheng was dressed in a dignified and luxurious ink-black brocade robe today, his hair combed neatly. He looked exactly like a rich young master. His every movement exuded an extraordinary aura and a graceful demeanor. In Yi Qing Luo's eyes, it was as though the son whom she had raised had finally grown up. Pei Sheng didn't show any signs of stage fright in front of a group of big shots. With a slight smile, he nodded towards the crowd to express his greeting. That is, the boss of the Treasures Exchange Hall? He looks so handsome. I didn't expect Boss Pei to be so young. He's walking towards us. Those few ladies looked towards Pei Sheng's direction as their eyes were almost glued onto Pei Sheng. The arrogant lady endured the pain as she leaned her body towards the sacred maiden, and after that, she shot a vicious and complacent look at Yi Qing Luo. Did you see that Boss Pei has personally come out to welcome our sacred maiden? You're dead meat. Pei Sheng was indeed walking towards them. His target was very decisive. He crossed the crowd and walked over. The few ladies were so agitated that their faces flushed red. Even the aloof and respectable sacred maiden in the middle had a faint complacent look in her eyes. Did Boss Pei hear about the small fight outside the auction house and specially came over to mediate? He's indeed Boss Pei. He's personally here for such a small matter. He's really responsible. If what that sacred maiden said is true, then that young lady is probably in trouble. Who knows, Boss Pei and Imperial Madam are close friends, and if sacred maiden's words were to reach Imperial Madam's ears, Imperial Madam would not let this matter rest. The surrounding big shots were discussing as they watched the show. Pei Sheng walked to the front of the ladies. He paused as he took a look at those few coquettish ladies. After that, he was about to walk past them. Suddenly, a figure blocked in front of him. Boss Pei, I'm so sorry to make you come out personally to fetch me. Pei Sheng was blocked. In front of him was a lady dressed in white with a veil. Who was this lady? You don't even know her, why did you fetch her? Even though he was complaining in his heart, he still had to maintain a decent smile on his face. This young lady? I know, His Majesty asked you to come and pick me up, right? The saintess maintained her elegant smile and raised her head slightly, looking very arrogant. Bizun? Pei Xing subconsciously looked towards Yiqing Luo. What and what? If the venerable sovereign were to pick someone up, it would be Luo. What does it have to do with this strange woman? Pei Xing only heard from old Lai that he sensed Yiqing Luo's presence and specially came to the entrance to receive her. He hadn't even reached Yiqing Luo. However, he was stopped by these strange little girls. Whereas Yiqing Luo stood by the side with her arms crossed, enjoying the show. He had not figured out the situation yet. Suddenly, a figure flew towards him. Pei Xing was so frightened that he quickly moved to the side. He saw a woman who had thrown herself at him a little too fiercely. She was unable to stand firmly for a moment and staggered a few times. Fortunately, the woman beside him pulled him back in time. The woman's face was spoiled and her eyes were red as she clutched her wrist and whimpered, "Boss Pei, you have to stand up for us. Look at that slut, she dealt me a vicious hand at your auction's entrance. Look at my hand. It's broken." Chapter 39:59. Pei Xing looked towards the direction which the lady was pointing at. Following that, he met with the young lady's smiling eyes. By his ear, the lady was still crying as she continued, "You don't know, that slut has no right to enter Boss Pei's auction house. She has ulterior motives towards the overlord, intentionally acting coquettishly, trying to seduce the overlord." The arrogant lady pushed the sacred maiden forward again. "This is Shadowless City's sacred maiden, Mu Qiulan. The reason why sacred maiden is here is firstly to take part in Boss Pei's auction, and secondly is to attend the overlord's appointment." When she mentioned the two words, attend, the arrogant lady intentionally emphasized on her tone. She even looked at Yiqing Luo complacently. "Our sacred maiden is not like some people, racking her brains to cling onto a man and sell herself." Shadowless City's sacred maiden? Pei Xing's brows creased slightly. With Qiao Yulu in front of him. Towards the sacred maiden, two words. Pei Xing felt some disgust in his heart. But she was after all another main city's sacred maiden. He still had to give her some face on the surface. He gave a distant yet polite smile. "So it's Shadowless City's sacred maiden? Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you." This was originally just a polite sentence. When that arrogant lady heard that, she took it seriously as the complacent expression on her face became even more obvious. "Sacred maiden is kind-hearted and will not sue you over such a small matter." Following that, she raised her arm and pointed towards Yiqing Luo as her voice was mixed with viciousness and gnashing her teeth. "But I still need to trouble Boss Pei to deal with this slut who harbors ill intentions towards the overlord and even offended sacred maiden." As she said that, she stared malevolently at Yiqing Luo with a complacent look. "Otherwise, if our sacred maiden were to fly into a rage, I believe the consequences. Boss Pei is very clear about it." Pei Xing. He wasn't clear, totally not clear. But he was very clear that if Yiqing Luo were to fly into a rage, the consequences would be extremely horrifying. After she finished acting cool, the arrogant lady looked at Pei Xing with a complacent look. But she discovered that Pei Xing's expression was complicated, totally without any intention to go along with her. The arrogant lady's face sunk as she stomped her feet angrily. "Boss Pei, our sacred maiden is invited by the overlord. You don't wish for this matter to reach the overlord's ears, right?" The big shots watching couldn't help but laugh. "She's the young mistress of a prominent clan in Shadowless City, right? If I'm not mistaken, I met her at the banquet in Shadowless City. What kind of family could raise such a moron? Who doesn't know that the overlord and Lady D are very close? Who doesn't know that Boss Pei is Lady D's friend?" "That's right. You're using the arch to pressure Boss Pei in front of him. You must be out of your mind, right?" One by one, the big shots began to dig up the identities of these young ladies. Even their families were ridiculed. The haughty woman and the others naturally heard the mockery. She even heard them start to mock her family. All of them were so angry that their faces turned red. He dared to be angry, but he didn't dare to say anything. Pei Xing looked sympathetically at the woman who was still whimpering. He agreed with the big shots very much. This group of women really thought highly of themselves. In front of the main character, she kept referring to him as Di Zun, in such an ambiguous manner. Don't think that His Majesty is the king of jealousy. The moment Yiqing Luo's vinegar jar was overturned. Chapter 39:60. As expected. When Pei Xing was looking at Yiqing Luo, he saw Yiqing Luo's eyes curling upwards, coquettish, devilish like a blooming poppy. But he could clearly see it. Under the blossoming flames, the hidden sharpness. But these women in front of him apparently didn't know about it. They even attributed the reason why they were in such a predicament to Yiqing Luo. Pei Xing coughed lightly. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm unable to do anything about your request. As he was saying that, he walked past the few women and walked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. What do you mean? The arrogant woman retorted angrily. What do you mean by unable to do anything? A lady by the side pulled the arrogant woman's arm. I heard that Boss Pei seems to have a fiancé. Could it be it's... Before the word her could be said, Pei Xing's eyes widened as he interrupted sharply. Don't talk nonsense. I still want to live on. Earlier when old Master Huangfu forcefully put him and Yiqing Luo against each other, it had already caused the overlord to be unhappy with him. Pei Xing didn't dare to hear such words again. Boss Pei. Mu Qiulan raised her head as her beautiful eyes met Pei Xing's gaze. Her voice was calm with a tinge of elegance, but the words that came out from her mouth were filled with ridicule. A lady who uses her looks to serve others can also make Boss Pei helpless. This makes this saintess doubt Boss Pei's ability. She paused slightly and laughed. Her gaze seemed to look towards the direction of the auction venue. Apparently, she was doubting if this auction had any meaning at all. Pei Xing's eyes turned slightly cold as his gaze sunk. But the smile on his lips was even more gentle and polite. He looked at Mu Qiulan as he gave a distant smile. Saintess is right to lecture me. But this lady, even the overlord doesn't dare to touch her, not to mention me. When he said that, instantly the surrounding big shots were in an uproar. Even the overlord didn't dare to touch her? How was that possible? Was there anyone in this world whom the overlord didn't dare to touch? Mu Qiulan didn't expect Pei Xing to reply in this way. When she heard this, her beautiful eyes trembled as she looked in disbelief at that calm and indifferent young lady who was standing there lazily. A thought arose in her mind. The more he thought about it, the more flustered he became. At this moment, a figure squeezed out of the crowd. When the big shots saw that person, they immediately made way for him. Soon after, another figure walked out of the auction hall. It's Patriarch Qiao. There's also the seniors from Hell Palace. Why are they here? It seems like this farce has already spread to the venue. This is going to be interesting. The appearance of Patriarch Qiao and Old Lai caused a huge uproar. The women looked at the two people walking towards them. Then he turned to look at Mu Qiulan and said, Saintess, clan head Qiao and the seniors from the Underworld Palace are here. They will definitely give us. Before the words justice could even come out of his mouth, Patriarch Qiao and Old Lai directly walked past them, stopping right in front of Yiqing Luo and Pei Xing. Brat, I asked you to pick someone up, why are you taking so long? Don't you know it's very busy inside? Lao Lai patted Pei Xing's shoulder. Patriarch Qiao looked at Yiqing Luo. Imperial Madam, you've reached the venue, why don't you go in directly? Chapter 3961. The spectating bigwigs? Had they heard wrongly? Why did they seem to have heard? Imperial Madam's name? What did it mean by covering half of her face and they couldn't recognize her? They really didn't recognize her all right. The bigwigs were extremely shocked. The group of people were filled with disbelief as they stood dazed on the spot. Imperial Madam? Patriarch Qiao and Hell Palace's senior called that lady? Imperial Madam? In their minds, they suddenly recalled Pei Xing's words with a smile yet not a smile. This lady, even the overlord doesn't dare to touch her, not to mention me. Even the overlord didn't dare to touch her? Imperial Madam? Yiqing Luo? Apparently the surrounding bigwigs also thought of this sentence. Instantly all of them burst out laughing. Originally they were a bunch of onlookers. But now all of them started to crowd around. Ah, Boss Pei is right about one thing. In this world, the only lady whom the overlord doesn't dare to touch is Imperial Madam. I was still wondering what kind of lady was she to be so calm. I'd not expected her to be Imperial Madam. Imperial Madam? Imperial Madam? Numerous bigwigs swarmed forward to greet her. In an instant, he pushed away the few women who were standing rooted to the ground in a daze, their faces filled with astonishment. Madam Sacred, she's actually that Yiqing Luo? The lady looked at Mu Qiulan as her teeth were chattering. What should we do? Imperial Madam, the person we offended is Imperial Madam. We will definitely die a horrible death. Madam Sacred, you must save us. When the ladies regained their senses, their legs started to wobble. One by one they hugged Mu Qiulan's arm as they complained. They had never expected that this young lady who was standing outside the auction house hiding her head and peeping, was the rumored Yiqing Luo. because Yi Qing Luo's reputation had long resounded throughout the entire territory. If Yi Qing Luo appeared, the surrounding bigwigs would all rush forward to strike up a conversation. But things happened just like that. The young lady whom they were berating was Imperial Madam Yi Qing Luo. Just thinking of their attitude and what they said earlier, the lady's legs turned so wobbly that they almost knelt onto the ground. Mu Qiulan's head was throbbing from their crying. The expression on his face seemed to be covered with frost. She really didn't want to care about the lives of these idiots. However, the matter just now was so big. These women were her subordinates. If he really made them kneel on the ground and beg for mercy, she would only embarrass the saintess of Shadowless City. Mu Qiulan's face darkened. Under her sleeves, her fingers were so tight that red marks were almost forming on her flesh. She took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her chest. "Shut up." The women stopped crying and then started sobbing, not daring to make a sound. Mu Qiulan was deliberating on how to alleviate the current predicament. No matter what, she couldn't lose face as the saintess. However, the large group of people in front of them directly ignored their existence and walked towards the auction venue. And in the middle of these big shots was Yi Qing Luo. Mu Qiulan's eyes darkened as she coughed lightly and called out, "Madam?" His words immediately drew everyone's attention to him. Chapter 3962. Mu Qiulan walked over slowly as she slightly raised her head and met Yi Qing Luo's gaze. The red lips under the veil curled up beautifully. Her voice was gentle and beautiful. "I apologize to you on behalf of my friends." After all, in their hearts, the Overlord was a godlike existence. They had been guessing who was the lady who could tie the knot with the Overlord. "I didn't expect it to be you after all." She paused and gave a low laugh. "It's our bad eyesight to not recognize the Overlord." Saying that, Mu Qiulan looked at Yi Qing Luo and nodded her head slightly, expressing her apology. But her attitude was extremely lofty. No one could tell that this was an apologetic attitude. Moreover, everyone could tell that although Mu Qiulan was apologizing, but in her words, it was all ridiculing Yi Qing Luo. Born from a prestigious family? Wasn't this ridiculing Yi Qing Luo's low status? Dmo Shen was a godlike existence and she Yi Qing Luo? The last two words, bad eyesight, were just short of saying, "You're not worthy of the Overlord at all." The big shots frowned as they were annoyed by this arrogant young lady who didn't know when to stop. Just as they were about to stand up for the Overlord to gain some attention. But they heard a young lady's sweet laughter. Shadowless City's sacred lady is rather self-aware. Since you know that your eyesight is bad, then don't lead your own dog and go around biting people. When everyone heard this voice, they suppressed the thought of standing up for her. "Who are you calling a dog?" The arrogant lady's face turned black as she was about to fly into a rage. But she was stopped by Mu Qiulan. Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes rose into an arc as she gave an evil look. "I heard that Shadowless City's sacred lady is here specially to attend my Xian's appointment, is that right?" Her voice was slightly flirtatious. Every word seemed to drag out the ending syllable. Mu Qiulan also discovered it. When the young lady in front of her smiled, the noble and elegant aura which belonged to a young lady was dispersed. Mu Qiulan's face turned slightly pale, but she tried her best to control the trembling in her voice. "Right?" After she said this word, she took a deep breath and calmed herself down a little. An undetectable hint of jealousy flashed across his eyes. "The Overlord and Madame Dizun are very close. I don't think he will stop me from meeting the Overlord, right?" She purposely mentioned this sentence. It was obviously intentional. Not only did she display her demeanor in front of everyone, but she also showed that she had a clear conscience. It could also agitate Yi Qing Luo, making her unable to stop her from making an appointment with the Overlord. After all, they were in front of so many big shots. If Yi Qing Luo were to stop her, wouldn't she appear to be extremely narrow-minded? Mu Qiulan was even worse, hoping that Yi Qing Luo would turn ugly because of jealousy. If Yi Qing Luo were to kick up a fuss because of this, the Overlord would definitely hate her. The entire Earth domain would know that she, Yi Qing Luo, was a petty and jealous woman. However, Mu Qiulan apparently didn't understand Yi Qing Luo, and treating Yi Qing Luo as an ordinary lady was a huge mistake. As expected, after hearing Mu Qiulan's words, Yi Qing Luo started laughing. Her eyes were curved and her smile was very deep. But the crowd couldn't feel that smile at all. They only felt a sudden powerful aura enveloping the surroundings. It made everyone's back unknowingly turn cold. For a moment, the bustling auction house's entrance fell into silence. Chapter 3963. Her magnanimity instead made everyone feel comfortable. It totally didn't make anyone feel disgusted. Mu Qiulan's expression sunk instantly as her eyes were filled with astonishment. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up as her smile grew wider with a hint of ridicule. A noble and elegant mysterious maiden like you shouldn't do. Knowing that I can't allow Xian to meet other ladies, you still want to meet Xian, this kind of thing that would make the world laugh at you, right? Mu Qiulan's expression changed drastically as it turned green and white. She had not expected this. She would be counterattacked by Yi Qingluo. If she really met the Dizun now, it would be too late. Perhaps the entire Earth domain would start spreading that she, Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, was an indecent lady. Her reputation would be completely ruined. Mu Qiulan was so angry that her eyes turned slightly red. This was completely lifting a rock to smash her own feet. Wasn't her motive for coming to the Earth domain because of the Overlord? If she didn't meet the Overlord, what was the point of her rushing over from so far away? But Yi Qingluo seemed as though she couldn't see her raging emotions. She was still smiling like a flower as her long and narrow eyes curved up as her voice was faint with an obvious sense of teasing. Oh right, since Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is specially here for Xian's appointment and not for the first auction of the treasure gathering, then I've already rejected you on behalf of Xian. You can be mellow. The word scram was at the tip of her tongue when Yi Qingluo thought for a moment and changed to a more elegant word. Let's go. Mu Qiulan clenched her fists as she maintained her mysterious maiden demeanor. Imperial Madam, how can you make a decision on behalf of the Overlord? Yi Qingluo smiled. You said it yourself, Xian and I have a good relationship. Mu Qiulan's fingers curled up as she opened her mouth wanting to say something. But Yi Qingluo totally ignored her as she walked into the auction venue under the escort of a group of big shots. Mu Qiulan was not resigned as she led a few ladies forward. The guards at the entrance immediately stopped them. When had Mu Qiulan ever suffered such humiliation? This without embroiling city even rejected her entry into an auction venue? The few ladies beside her were feeling uneasy. They had not expected their backing to retreat in front of Imperial Madam. Now I can't even enter the auction hall? Now that something like this had happened and they had offended the Emperor's wife, how were they supposed to explain this to their family? At this time, some of the other young ladies looked at her mockingly. Women, you should be more respectful. Don't keep thinking about other people's husbands. After entering the auction house, Qiao family had then dispersed those big shots. They had more or less heard about what had happened outside the door. He could roughly guess the reason why Yi Qingluo disguised herself. Because of this, they didn't let those big shots disturb Yi Qingluo. After arriving at the private room that had already been booked, only then did the clamor die down a little. Lao Lai sat down. How did you provoke that group of people? And where is His Majesty? Not long ago, he saw the two of them loving each other and feeding each other sweetly. Why was it that Yi Qingluo was the only one left at the auction? Suddenly he slapped his thigh and said, Hey Dizun, don't tell me there's really something going on between you and that woman just now? Did you run away because you saw your old lover? Yi Qingluo? She smiled slightly as she looked at Lao Lai. Since you miss Xian so much, I can send you to see him. That smile was hair-raising. Chapter 3964. But that mysterious maiden from Shadowless City shouldn't have the guts to use the name of the Overlord to be so ostentatious. Pei Xing still found it strange. Yi Qingluo nodded. Indeed. How would anyone dare to use Dmo Xian's name to act cool? Especially knowing that Dmo Xian was in without embroiling city, she still acted cool. Even if it was mysterious maiden from Linglong Palace. She shouldn't have the guts. So, keeping an appointment with Dmo Xian might be true. Zhou Mo leaned aside as he raised his phoenix eyes in a frivolous manner. Diske, the Overlord actually wants to meet another lady in private. He obviously doesn't put you, the Empress, in his eyes. Saying that, he raised his hand and touched his chin. But men are all like this. How can the wildflowers outside be as fragrant as the flowers at home? Before he could finish his words, a pair of eyes filled with anger was fixed on him. Zhou Mo quivered as he saw Kitty Li staring at him with her big eyes full of anger. He hurriedly stood up and wrapped his arms around Kitty Li, laughing out loud. Of course, a man like me is wholeheartedly devoted. I only have eyes for the kitty at home. Kitty Li was still struggling. Zhou Mo quickly looked at Yi Qingluo and said in a serious tone, Little Qingluo, you must not spoil a man's bad habit. Show me your Empress dignity and teach the Overlord a lesson. Kitty Li replied, "Ha men." A pair of clowns were messing around. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Zhou Mo as she lowered her eyes slightly. In her heart, she naturally believed in Dmo Xian. She was just curious. Why would Mu Qiulan be so sure that Dmo Xian had an appointment with her? Earlier, Dmo Xian should be handling some matters, so he couldn't accompany her to the auction. She was sure of this. Dmo Xian had never mentioned who he was meeting at the auction. So, Mu Qiulan specially came to the auction venue to meet Dmo Xian. What on earth was going on? Ah Luo. Pei Xing looked at the silent Yiqing Luo and called out carefully, Do you think that mysterious maiden's words can be trusted? Yiqing Luo shook her head. Wait for Ah Xian to come back and ask him. You're the main character of this auction, so go and control the venue. Pei Xing and Xiao family patriarch exchanged a few more words and left the room. The big shots participating in the auction already knew that Yiqing Luo was staying in this room. The moment the door was opened, there was a lot of bustling chatter outside. And there were quite a number of people sticking their heads in. With just a few words, Qiao family's head sent everyone away. Family Qiao Yi family Tian, Chen maiden patriarch. Chen Mo Yi maiden from Lord Li. Yiqing Luo was afraid of such a situation, hence she put on a disguise on her outer appearance. Who would have thought that his identity would be exposed because of the mysterious lady of Shadowless City? Tian to had her hat. Yiqing Luo might as well take off her veil and remove the makeup on her eyes and brows. Her countenance that could topple cities was peerlessly beautiful. Zhou Mo carried Kitty Li, whom he had finally coaxed, as he sat on the seat beside Yiqing Luo. Don't you feel that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, and that mysterious maiden who had died previously, are somewhat similar? Perhaps the mysterious maiden taught by Ling Long Palace is in this mode. Yiqing Luo replied calmly. Old Lai also came over, even mysterious maiden from Shadowless City came over, looks like. Without embroiling, city's matter is quite big. Ling Long Palace's people also died in the auction. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. Chapter 3965. To nurture a mysterious fairy was a place that all the citizens in the Earth realm yearned for and respected. But Yiqing Luo was very curious. What was the significance of the existence of the three main cities' mysterious fairy? One was Qiaoyulu, and the current Mu Qiulan. From them, the only common point was that they were the daughters of large families and their ages were extremely young. Moreover, they thought too highly of themselves. Yiqing Luo knocked on the table as she looked at Old Lai. When was the Ling Long Palace formed? Like the main city's mysterious fairy, when did it start? This. Old Lai scratched the back of his head. This kind of thing, it's impossible for us Hell Palace to know. His voice paused as he suddenly thought of something as he patted his head. That's right, speaking of this. I remember. That is our Hell Palace's history, at least in my generation. Pushing back 2 generations. It seems that there was a senior who fought with the Ling Long Palace. Pushing back 2 generations? That was at least 200 to 300 years ago. The result of the fight was? Yiqing Luo asked. It's a draw. Old Lai shook his head uncertainly. Now the Ling Long Palace and Hell Palace have nothing to do with each other. That battle should be a draw. Which meant that the appearance of the Ling Long Palace was 200 to 300 years ago? In these 200 to 300 years, they had a foothold in the Earth realm. And changed the living rules of the Earth realm. This wasn't something that could be achieved with just 1 or 2 points of ability. What was the motive of the Ling Long Palace? The existence of Mysterious Fairy was to suppress each main city's city lord and maintain the balance of the Earth realm. From Qiaoyulu's actions, Yiqing Luo totally didn't feel any of the responsibilities and obligations that a mysterious maiden should have. On the contrary, she treated the citizens in her own city as her slaves. If she wanted the citizens to live, the citizens would live. If she wanted the citizens to die, the citizens had to die. This made Yiqing Luo started to suspect why the Ling Long Palace created the so-called Mysterious Fairy. Anyway, Yiqing Luo didn't have any good impression towards this so-called Ling Long Palace from the bottom of her heart. Yiqing Luo had a premonition. She would meet the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City again. Pei Xing's first auction went very smoothly. After all, he had so many assists. Anyone with a brain wouldn't cause trouble at this time. Once there was trouble, that was to go with Pei Xing. Who was behind Pei Xing? The Imperial Madam, Di Zun, and one of the 4 great Tian families of the Heaven Realm, the Huangfu family, as his backing. They couldn't wait to suck up to him, so how could they not comply with the rules? In particular, when Pei Xing took out the items that he had specially prepared and displayed them in the name of the treasure's trading house, all the big shots were very enthusiastic in bidding. These items were auctioned under the name of the Treasure Gathering Exchange. Pei Xing had specially listened to Yi Qing Luo's opinion. The Qiao family head would be responsible for donating all the crystals obtained from these auction items to the various remote areas in the land to support the citizens who were having a hard time. Using Yi Qing Luo's words, it was a charity auction. Therefore, all the big shots had to show their wealth and kindness to leave a good impression in front of Pei Xing. The auction was in full swing. Very quickly, the 2 bottles of beauty cream which Yi Qing Luo had specially given to Pei Xing were laid out. The popularity of the beauty cream had not subsided yet, especially when he heard that there were only 2 bottles. One by one, the ladies were agitated as they madly bid. After all, it was her own thing. Yi Qing Luo's interest was piqued. Chapter 3966. Coincidentally, she heard a familiar voice calling out, 500,000 crystal stones. That voice made Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she looked towards the direction of the voice with interest. Through the crowd, there were a few figures seated at the private room near the corner on the first floor. Yi Qing Luo's angle was coincidentally able to see that private room clearly. She also saw Mu Qiulan, who was pretending to be elegant as she sat there. Beside her were those few rich young ladies. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose in interest. They actually managed to enter? Could it be that what she said earlier wasn't it obvious enough? How big of a face did they have to be able to appear in the auction venue as though nothing had happened after being counterattacked by her? That face, wasn't it a little too thick? She thought. These few distinguished rich young ladies were the kind of people who cared about their face. What's so interesting about it? On seeing Yi Qing Luo's teasing smile, Old Lai instantly perked up as he leaned over, following Yi Qing Luo's gaze. He knew it. As long as he followed the imperial madam, there would definitely be something interesting to pass the time. Old Lai's interest was soaring, but when his gaze fell onto those few ladies, his brows instantly creased into a bundle. Why is it them again? Boring. He waved his hand as he put on a disinterested look. A bunch of young ladies, they can't even afford to fight. Yi Qing Luo squinted at Old Lai as both her hands were propped on the exquisite carved railing. Her brows were languid as she spoke in an indifferent tone. Young ladies? Those people are all young ladies from prestigious families, and Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is their backing. Touching them is equivalent to touching the powerhouse behind them. Her brows rose as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Otherwise, how do you think they managed to enter the auction venue? The people standing guard outside the auction house were only there to guard the door. If Mu Qiulan and those few young ladies forcefully entered the auction venue, plus they had the invitation card in their hands, as long as they could put down their face, naturally they would be able to sit there. The more Old Lai heard Yi Qing Luo's words, the more excited he got. His 2 eyes lit up. Yi Qing Luo sensed that something was amiss as her eyes retracted and looked towards Old Lai. Before she could even open her mouth, Old Lai leaped down from the railing. His agile figure instantly landed beside the private room where Mu Qiulan and the others were seated. Then a slap landed on the floor. Pa! The ground cracked. The wooden table exploded. Falling from the sky, another burst of crackling profound light exploded. It immediately attracted everyone's attention. Even the auctioneer, who was standing on the auction stage and holding the beautifying cream, stopped talking. The guards heard the commotion and swarmed over. But, when they saw that the person descending from the sky was Old Lai, who was wearing a white robe and laughing wildly, they all looked at each other, dumbfounded. What was going on? Wasn't this the senior from the underworld palace who served the Lady Monarch? Why did he suddenly make a move? Should he stop them or not? Stop? Could they stop it? Wouldn't Madame D be angry? Not going to stop them? Wouldn't the auction be interrupted? What was going on? Was there an internal strife? The guards were dumbfounded. The group of people who took part in the auction were also dumbstruck. They hadn't figured out what was going on. Following that, all of them shot their gazes towards the second floor, towards Yi Qing Luo's cabin. Yi Qing Luo, who had both hands on the railing, welcomed various kinds of gazes from all directions. Chapter 3967. She just casually said it out. Then he got excited. Even if she wanted to create trouble, she still needed to choose the occasion? Didn't she know that this was Pei Xing's first auction? In this way, wouldn't the auction house be in a mess? Pei Sheng's heart was going to be traumatized, all right? In the private seats, Mu Qiulan and the rest were all shocked. The two young misses who were seated in front were shocked by the sudden profound raised might as they spat out a mouthful of blood. What do you mean by this? Mu Qiulan stood up abruptly as her expression sunk as she stared at Old Lai viciously. Old Lai laughed mischievously. Hasn't Madame D already said that since you're not here to participate in the auction, then don't appear here? You're an eyesore. Yiqing Luo? When did she say this? She wanted to create trouble, why did she drag her into it? It made it seem as though she was the one who ordered Old Lai to create trouble. In other people's eyes. Wasn't it her who was overbearing and couldn't tolerate Mu Qiulan? Alright, her reputation of being a jealous woman was going to be set in stone. Mu Qiulan's expression turned cold. No matter what motive I have to participate in the auction, since I have the invitation card, then I'm a guest invited by Treasure Gathering and I have the right to participate in the auction. She said it word by word in an extremely serious and forceful manner. How can Madame D not even allow me to enter the auction just because the Overlord has a close relationship with me? Isn't this too much of a bully? Mu Qiulan clenched her fists tightly as she raised her head up high, maintaining her mysterious maiden's dignity. She wanted to destroy Yiqing Luo's reputation. A jealous woman, a narrow-minded woman, was not fit to stand beside the Overlord. A powerful existence like the Overlord. Even if there were a few ladies around him, wasn't that a very normal thing? Since ancient times, heroes were paired with beauties. On what basis did Yiqing Luo not allow the Overlord to meet her? Mu Qiulan's words were all ridiculing Yiqing Luo for being a jealous woman. Old Lai gave a mischievous laugh. Oh? Invitation card? Where did you get the invitation card from? Let me take a look. Mu Qiulan looked towards the young miss beside her. Show him the invitation card. The young miss was terrified as she cowered and took the invitation card. When Lao Lai reached out to receive the invitation. Ah! She screamed, threw the invitation card to Lao Lai, turned around and ran behind Mu Qiulan. It was as if he had been badly frightened. Lao Lai's appearance was indeed quite frightening. That face, coupled with his identity. How could an ordinary woman dare to approach him? Lao Lai flicked his sleeve and took the invitation card. It's so beautiful. Look carefully. Mu Qiulan sneered. She walked into this auction fair and square, and this invitation card was personally sent out by the Treasures Gathering trading house. But Mu Qiulan's haughty expression had yet to surface on her face. There was a hissing sound. Old Lai tore the invitation into pieces. Then she tossed it into the sky, scattering flowers. Now you don't have an invitation. Old Lai smiled. Mu Qiulan. She was so angry that she was about to explode. The onlookers. Is there such a thing? As expected of the underworld palace. Angering people to death without paying for it. Yiqing Luo, well, she was speechless about Lao Lai and didn't want to complain anymore. You're too much of a bully. The Treasures Gathering trading house is so overbearing just because they have the support of the Overlord. Do they still have any rules? The arrogant young miss was so angry that she stood out. Her hand, which was broken by Yiqing Luo, was still hurting. She had traveled thousands of miles from Shadowless City to Without Embroiling City. But she was treated in such a way. Chapter 3968. If they continued to endure, the other party might just stand on their heads and pee. Mu Qiulan clenched her sleeves tightly as the face under the veil was also restraining the twisted arc. She raised her head and looked at the young lady standing on the second floor. Looking from this angle, the surroundings were ravaged by the luminous pearls. As though it had coated the young lady with a layer of velvet. The young lady who had already removed her veil and was facing the sky without any makeup. Under this light, her skin was sparkling and her beauty was clearly seen. Just a single glance. Even as a lady, she who was jealous couldn't stop her heart from skipping a beat. Mu Qiulan's fingers suddenly tightened. The face under the veil suddenly turned pale. Madam Emperor, since the Overlord has personally acknowledged you, you shouldn't rely on the Overlord's trust in you to be so unbridled. Mu Qiulan accused her word by word. Since I'm here at the auction, I'm a guest. But because of my relationship with the Overlord, you let this Hell Palace senior chase me out of the auction. How is this the demeanor of a matriarch? Her words paused slightly as her vision suddenly shifted onto Pei Sheng, who was standing next to the auctioneer. Or is this how the Treasure Exchange treats its guests? Basically everyone who came to the auction knew the significance of the Treasure Exchange to Pei Sheng. In order to complete the auction's wish, Pei Sheng specially delayed the date of going to the Heaven Realm with Old Master Huangfu. It was sufficient to show exactly how important this auction was to him. Mu Qiulan's words. Not only did she criticize Yiqing Luo, she was also ridiculing the treasure exchange, merely a toy of Yiqing Luo. She was also hinting at Pei Sheng. He treated Yiqing Luo as his brother. Yiqing Luo knew clearly that it was such an important day, yet she still let Old Lai create trouble and mess up the auction. Pei Sheng, who was called out, frowned slightly as he walked over. Before he came over, Old Lai had already made way for him, without a single bit of remorse for disrupting the meticulously prepared auction. Instead he grinned as he said, "Lad, don't be so courteous. I know you want to thank me for helping you chase these troublemakers out. What's our relationship? No need to be so courteous." Pei Sheng. The spectating bigwigs. Does your face hurt when you say this? Even Mu Qiulan and the others choked upon hearing this. His skin was probably thicker than theirs, right? Yiqing Luo also wanted to express that she really didn't know this person. Damn it. If Lao Lai walked out now, it meant that she wanted him to. He was being stupid here. Did she still want her face? Unable to tolerate it any longer, Yiqing Luo flipped over and leapt down from the railing, grabbing onto Old Lai's robe. Shut up. Old Lai turned his head to look at Yiqing Luo, and that terrifying face was smiling like a flower. Imperial Madam, I'm enough. Just these few young ladies who don't have any battle power, I can settle them alone. Just wait there for the forces behind them to come knocking on your door, then make your move. Yiqing Luo. She wanted to seal Old Lai's mouth. They might as well poison him and make him mute. Hearing this, Mu Qiulan's expression darkened. Imperial Madam, don't tell me you want to declare war on Linglong Palace because of my relationship with His Majesty? Her words instantly made the surrounding bigwigs drew in a breath of cold air. Declare war on Linglong Palace? Linglong Palace was the symbol of the Earth domain. If Yiqing Luo declared war on Linglong Palace, which was to become enemies with the entire Earth domain. Chapter 3969. Let's declare war then. Who have I, Old Lai, been afraid of? Old Lai puffed out his chest as he patted it disapprovingly. Mu Qiulan's expression sunk even deeper as her eyes were covered with a layer of malevolence. The surrounding big shots all frowned. If they were to really fight, who should they help? Everyone's vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. Luckily, Yiqing Luo's rationality was still present. She didn't bother about Old Lai's words. She even grabbed Old Lai's robe and flung it behind him. You shut up. Old Lai, who was so arrogant that he had no brains, shrunk his neck and shut his mouth after Yiqing Luo's explosive roar. Seeing Yiqing Luo's actions, Mu Qiulan felt that Yiqing Luo was afraid of her words. She finally felt a little better in her heart. A sliver of delight surfaced between her brows, just as she was about to open her mouth. But Yiqing Luo snatched it first. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden, who do you think you are to be worth my effort? Her tone was filled with a smile as her eyes were filled with ridicule. You. Mu Qiulan's expression sunk. Yiqing Luo's sentence was totally a slap on her face. And it was the kind of slap that was so loud. Especially Yiqing Luo's gaze when she looked at her, it was as though she was looking at a retard. This made Mu Qiulan's heart unable to calm down. Yiqing Luo appeared extremely lazy, and when she looked at Mu Qiulan, she even yawned as she put on a bored look. Just a clown, I don't have the leisure to waste my time on you. Mu Qiulan's expression turned gloomy. Saying that, she turned around lazily and raised her hand as she waved at Pei Sheng. Continue with your auction. Pei Sheng, could this kind of situation really continue? Everyone's attention was focused on her and Mu Qiulan. How was he going to continue? Even if he wanted to continue. Yiqing Luo's words had agitated him quite a bit. No matter how one looked at it, Mu Qiulan wouldn't take it lying down, right? As expected. At the next instant, Mu Qiulan couldn't take it anymore as she moved and blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. From the first time she met Yiqing Luo, she had always been in a state of tolerance. Keep enduring, keep enduring. She was the dignified, mysterious maiden of Shadowless City. On what basis could she tolerate Yiqing Luo? Just because Yiqing Luo was the imperial madam? The title of the emperor's wife would probably fall on her head when she met the overlord. Why was he so arrogant? Mu Qiulan's belly, full of resentment and indignation, erupted in an instant. Her expression was ugly and her eyes were vicious. Even the veil could not hide the twisted expression on her face. Imperial madam, you make it sound so nice, but in reality, she sneered and ridiculed. Hey, if it weren't for your order, would the seniors of the Underworld Palace come to cause trouble for me during the auction? At the end of the day you're just bothered by my relationship with Dizun. Yi Qingluo lifted her eyelids slightly. After seeing Mu Qiulan's face that was twisted with hatred, she smiled. Her pink lips curled into a mocking smile. The mysterious fairy of Shadowless City is so thick-skinned that I can't even catch up to her. The young girl's mocking smile almost made Mu Qiulan lose control of her emotions. Yi Qingluo's slender fingers lifted up slightly, brushing past her chin as she gave an evil smile. What's the relationship between Ah Xian and you? You keep on talking about your relationship with Ah Xian, your relationship with Ah Xian. Then, please tell me what's the relationship between the two of you. Word by word she spat it out from her pink lips. Her voice was obviously very light. Her tone was obviously very calm. But, when the words entered her ears. Chapter 3970. Somehow she felt that when Yi Qingluo asked this question, it was filled with sarcasm. As though she was ridiculing her wishful thinking. Furthermore, how was she supposed to answer this question? Right from the start, Mu Qiulan had intentionally mentioned her relationship with the Overlord. It was to let the surrounding bigwigs know. Not only Yi Qingluo had the Overlord as her backing. Her relationship with the Overlord wasn't shallow. But when Yi Qingluo directly asked this question, she didn't know how to answer again. After all, the young lady standing in front of her was the Overlord's wife who had personally acknowledged, which was equivalent to the Empress. If she directly said that she had an ambiguous relationship with the Overlord in front of Yi Qingluo, then it would be confirmed that she was a lady who seduced someone else's husband. Mu Qiulan pursed her red lips as she deliberated for some time before replying, I had once sat at the same table with the Overlord while drinking wine and chatting. What relationship do you think I have with the Overlord? Saying that, she laughed lightly as her tone was filled with complacency. Drinking wine and chatting? Yi Qingluo laughed out in ridicule. My Ah Xian is really popular. Just sitting at the same table and he's able to make others remember him till now. She laughed softly as her long and narrow eyes rose. To tell the truth, if you didn't say it, I really didn't know. So you and Ah Xian just sat at the same table. The surrounding people couldn't help but laughed out loud. Mu Qiulan still hadn't understood why these people laughed along. The surrounding bigwigs looked at Mu Qiulan as though they were looking at a retard. Some of them even had some sympathy in their eyes. This Shadowless City's mysterious young lady was obviously intentionally making others misunderstand that she had a relationship with the Overlord. In the end, there wasn't much of a relationship between them. The bigwigs present had never sat down at the same table and chatted about anything under the sun. However, at the very least, they had chatted in the same hall during the Qiao family's banquet. If they could use the Overlord's reputation in this way to show that they had a close relationship with the Overlord. They all had a close relationship with the Overlord, all right? Before they acted cool, they didn't even find out clearly. Mu Qiulan, who was ridiculed for no reason, felt a little embarrassed. She bit her lower lip hard and her fingers under her sleeves turned pale. You don't believe me, right? Then, Imperial Madam, please take a look at this. Mu Qiulan's eyes flashed with coldness as she fished out a jade pendant from her pocket. The jade pendant was sparkling and translucent. It was a transparent white. A purple light could be faintly seen floating in the air. The jade pendant wasn't big. It was about the size of half a palm. When Mu Qiulan raised the jade pendant up towards Yi Qingluo's eyes, the people in front could also clearly see the obvious word carved on the jade pendant. Emperor. When Yi Qingluo saw that piece of jade pendant, his pupils constricted unconsciously. She furrowed her brows. What do you mean? I'm sure the Imperial Madam knows whose jade pendant this is? After Mu Qiulan took out the jade pendant, she was filled with confidence. There was even a hint of pride in her voice. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips slightly. The handwriting carved on the jade pendant was indeed Dmo Xian's handwriting. In addition, the material of the jade pendant could not be faked. Especially, that jade pendant indeed had Dmo Xian's presence. This jade pendant. It should be Dmo Xian's jade pendant. Seeing that Yi Qingluo didn't reply, she was apparently stunned by the jade pendant that she took out. Chapter 3971. The Overlord's Jade Pendant. The big shots who were watching all gasped. As for the jade pendant, it was not a problem for it to be used as an ornament. However, if it was in the hands of a woman, the significance would be completely different. After all, the jade pendant was something that was hung on one's body and carried around with one's aura. Many people like to use their jade pendants, with the opposite sex as a token of love. Furthermore, even if it wasn't a token of love, the fact that the other party was willing to give him the jade pendant meant that the two of them were on good terms. Mu Qiulan actually had Lord Overlord's jade pendant in her hands? All of a sudden the attitude of the crowd, who originally felt ashamed of Mu Qiulan's stubbornness towards Lord Dizun, also changed. There were quite a number of ladies whose gazes towards Yiqing Luo were filled with pity. Sai, the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City, had the Overlord's jade pendant. This meant that the relationship between the mysterious maiden of Shadowless City and the Overlord was indeed very good. Madame D trusted Dizun so much. But, with the evidence before their eyes, they had no choice but to believe it. The surrounding people's attitude changed, and those pitiful gazes towards Yiqing Luo made Mu Qiulan feel extremely carefree. His ferocious expression was replaced by a smile. There was a smug smile in his eyes. Mu Qiulan put away the jade pendant as if it was a precious treasure. She held it in her palm and said, "Imperial Madam, I know you're feeling very sad, but this is the truth." Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her charming eyes stared straight at the jade pendant in her palm. He didn't say anything. Old Lai couldn't hold it in any longer as he took a look at the complacent Mu Qiulan and leaned close to Yiqing Luo as he lowered his voice. "Imperial Madam, that jade pendant really belongs to the Overlord, right?" Yiqing Luo glanced at him coldly. Lao Lai shivered and said righteously, "Do you have anything from His Majesty? At least something more advanced than that jade pendant. Take it out and smash her to death." Yiqing Luo's gaze turned even colder. It was so cold that Lao Lai retracted his neck bit by bit and covered his mouth with his hand. But Old Lai's words were still heard by many people. All of them were staring at Yiqing Luo. I wanted to see what she had to offer. Something better. But, under everyone's gaze, Yiqing Luo merely raised her gaze indifferently as it fell onto Mu Qiulan, as she spoke in an indifferent tone, "Seeing that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden doesn't have any self-respect, and is so shameless in trying to prove her relationship with Xian, I'll pity you." She naturally wouldn't use anything more valuable than a jade pendant to compete with Mu Qiulan. That jade pendant indeed belonged to Dmo Xian. But who could ascertain that the jade pendant was personally given to Mu Qiulan by Dmo Xian? She took out all kinds of things in front of everyone, insisting on competing with Mu Qiulan. This wasn't just lowering his own status. It would also elevate Mu Qiulan's status. Since Mu Qiulan wanted to be a clown, then let Dmo Xian personally slap their faces. Anyway, she believed in her Xian. "Are you going to let her meet His Majesty?" Old Lai said in a low voice. "You really don't want to kill her with something more precious? It's not like you to admit defeat like this. This old fellow still hasn't given up on stirring up trouble." Chapter 3972. These words instantly caused the complacent smile on Mu Qiulan's face to freeze. The hand holding the jade pendant unconsciously tightened. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at her as she turned around to return to her own cabin. Suddenly she seemed to have thought of something and her footsteps stopped. Then he turned around and looked at Mu Qiulan with a smile. That smile was bright and beautiful, extremely alluring. However, Mu Qiulan only felt that the smile was like an ice-cold venomous snake coiling around her. It was that brief moment of distraction. Mu Qiulan felt a dull pain in her wrist. Before he could react, a gust of wind blew past. Mu Qiulan staggered a few steps back. When the hurricane dissipated, she covered her throbbing arm. However, he realized that the jade pendant in his hand had disappeared. Her expression changed drastically as she abruptly raised her head and stared at Yiqing Luo. Indeed, in Yiqing Luo's hand he saw that piece of jade pendant. Yiqing Luo hooked the jade pendant and shook it a few times. The jade pendant glowed with a purple light. He could tell that it was a good item. "Bitch! Return the jade pendant to me." Mu Qiulan's expression changed drastically as she roared in fury. She stared at the jade pendant. It was hard to imagine that everything had happened in just an instant. Yiqing Luo snatched the jade pendant from her hand. How did he do it? That jade pendant must not fall into Yiqing Luo's hands. Otherwise, when Mu Qiulan thought of the consequences, her face turned deathly pale. She tried hard to maintain the demeanor of an Empyrean fairy, but at this moment she could no longer maintain it. With a leap, he landed in front of Yiqing Luo. He raised his hand to snatch the jade pendant. Only when her hand stretched out in front of Yiqing Luo. But he was frightened by Yiqing Luo's gaze as he froze on the spot. That gaze was like that of a ruthless and bloodthirsty beast. It was as if she would be completely devoured in an instant. Mu Qiulan's heart shuddered violently. However, when she fixed her eyes on him again. However, he only met the girl's mocking eyes. Those smiling eyes. It overlapped with the bloodlust from before. Mu Qiulan felt a chill run down her spine as if she was in an ice house. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo slowly raised her hand. He did not even touch Mu Qiulan with a single finger. Mu Qiulan felt an invisible resistance on her chest, which pushed her away and slammed heavily into the private room. The wooden tables and chairs were all smashed to pieces. Yiqing Luo's expression was indifferent as her emotions didn't fluctuate much as she looked at Mu Qiulan, as her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly. Then she slowly said, "This jade pendant belongs to Xian. I've already said that I'm a very stingy person. I'm so stingy that I can't tolerate other women carrying my man's belongings. So, I'll keep this jade pendant for the time being." She tossed the jade pendant into the air. The netherworld phoenix ring in his hand flashed and he kept it. Mu Qiulan watched helplessly as the jade pendant disappeared right before her eyes. She was so anxious that her eyes turned red. "Tc. That jade pendant is mine." Yiqing Luo smiled. "Isn't it said that you and Xian are on good terms? I've allowed you to meet Xian now. You want the jade pendant? Let Xian ask me personally." Saying that, she didn't even turn her head back as she directly leapt up and returned to the private room on the second floor. That posture was so cool that the surrounding big shots hadn't even caught up to her rhythm. Mu Qiulan was so infuriated that her eyes turned red as tears filled her eyes. She gritted her teeth and was about to rush up to snatch the jade pendant forcefully. But the few young ladies beside her immediately pounced forward to stop her. Chapter 3973. The other few young ladies nodded their heads vigorously. "Madam Profound Maiden, bear with it for a while. When the Overlord appears, we will complain to him. A jealous woman like her, the Overlord will definitely be disgusted. As long as the Overlord is here, we will be able to complain about Yiqing Luo's arrogance." The young ladies were actually more afraid of. Once they started to fight, the ones who would suffer would be them. They were totally bound to Mu Qiulan now. If Mu Qiulan took action, they would definitely take action. But the current situation, it was extremely disadvantageous to them. One look at the arrogant young ladies and they knew that her hand bones were broken. They didn't want to get hurt. Hearing the young lady's words, Mu Qiulan's face turned even paler. Her gaze towards Yiqing Luo's cabin was filled with hatred. But, no matter how much dissatisfaction she had no choice but to admit that what these young ladies said was indeed reasonable. If she took action, she would absolutely not gain any advantage and would even suffer a loss. Now, they could only wait for the Overlord. But that jade pendant? Mu Qiulan was feeling anxious and frustrated. But under the tugs of the young ladies, she still left the auction venue. Seeing that they had already left, Pei Xing and Xiao family's patriarch immediately stirred up the atmosphere, bringing the tempo of the auction. Although everyone was very interested in the interlude just now, they didn't know what to do. After all, it was related to the Overlord's gossip. But after the auction items were displayed one by one, everyone's attention was still attracted by the auction items. Although there was a little accident in the first round of auction, but it still ended satisfactorily. It continued all the way till the evening, which was around 7 or 8 in the evening when the auction ended. The big shots were looking for an opportunity to set up a banquet to invite Yiqing Luo, to pull their relationship closer. But when they reached the cabin's entrance, they discovered that there was no one inside. Even Pei Xing and Xiao family's patriarch didn't know when Yiqing Luo and the rest had left. After searching one round around the auction venue, they indeed didn't discover any traces of Yiqing Luo and the rest, so they left resentfully. By now, Yiqing Luo had already returned to the Qiao residence. She sat by the seat, holding that piece of jade pendant which she snatched from Mu Qiulan, swaying it in her hand. The candlelight swayed, making the purple light on the jade pendant shine even more treacherous. Yiqing Luo's fingertip touched that stream of light. This was indeed Dmo Xian's remnant aura. It wasn't fake. Yiqing Luo poked the jade pendant a few times. The purple flowing light kept darting around. At this moment, a familiar and warm scent of sandalwood entered his nostrils. Shortly after, her delicate body was pulled into a broad embrace. This sudden embrace brought with it a trace of coldness. But very quickly he was warmed by the temperature of the two of them. Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up as she turned around and met the man's gentle gaze. She wrapped her arms around the man's neck. So early? The last time I left for a day and a night, I was scolded by you. Naturally, I wouldn't dare to do it again. Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around the young lady's slender waist and rested his head on her shoulder. He fiercely inhaled the fragrance coming from the girl's body. Yiqing Luo snorted, "At least you're obedient. What are you looking at, so lost in thought that you didn't even notice my return?" Dmo Xian had just pushed the door open and saw the young lady sitting there, poking at something. Chapter 3974. Token of Love? Dmo Xian caught the jade pendant and didn't look at it. Instead, he lowered his head and bit the young lady's nose. "Having you as a lover is enough for me, how would I dare to have other lovers?" "Don't dare or don't want to?" Yiqing Luo pushed him as she snorted. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly, his voice was gentle and pampering. "Don't want and don't dare." Humph, Yiqing Luo raised her chin, looking like a noble queen as she glanced at the jade pendant in Dmo Xian's hand. "Seeing that you are so obedient, I will give you a chance to explain." Dmo Xian's line of sight fell on Yiqing Luo. His deep eyes gazed deeply at the young lady's face. His eyes were filled with pampering and tenderness. Yiqing Luo, who was being stared at, unnaturally turned her head and was about to push the man to explain. But her face was covered by a ball of warmth. The man's domineering kiss fell on her lips. The breath was boiling hot as if it was going to swallow her up. The arms that encircled her delicate body were constantly increasing the strength. Like he wanted to rub her into his body. The sudden passion made Yiqing Luo unable to control herself as her whole body softened in Dmo Xian's arms. Until she was out of breath. The man then let go of her. Yiqing Luo lay on his chest, her face flushed red. After gasping for breath for a while, she raised her fist and hammered his chest. She raised her head and glared at him. "I'm talking to you about serious matters. Are you feeling guilty? Are you trying to divert my attention by doing this?" The young lady's face was flushed red and her eyes were filled with seduction. This stare had no fierce expression at all. Instead it seemed unique. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened by a few notches. He hugged the young lady tightly, his chin rested on the young lady's slender shoulder and half of his face was buried under the young lady's fine black hair. The erect nose and soft thin lips brushed past the young lady's skin from time to time. Warm breath sprayed down. Yiqing Luo's legs softened a little. "It's your fault." The man's husky voice came into her ears. That slightly hoarse voice was very magnetic, teasing Yiqing Luo's heartstrings. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but struggle and pushed the man's head away. What do you mean by blame me? You are tempting me." Dmo Xian's head was in the young lady's palm and his arms were still tightly wrapped around her. "I obviously know that my self-control in front of you can't even withstand one blow. How did I seduce you?" She was obviously questioning him about his little lover. They were obviously aggressive. How did it become a temptation? Was he blaming her for being too beautiful? Dmo Xian's eyes sunk slightly like the starry sky as he looked deeply into Yiqing Luo's eyes. "I miss you. Your expression makes me want to." He dragged out the ending syllable and suppressed his voice as he whispered into Yiqing Luo's ears, "Eat you." Yiqing Luo, she had forgotten that Dmo Xian was a beast. There was no justification for beast. Yiqing Luo stared at him and pushed away the man's deliberately tempting head, avoiding the man's faintly discernible warm breath. "Do you want the chance to explain or not?" Dmo Xian nibbled on the slender little hand that was pushing him, as he raised his eyes slightly and gazed at Yiqing Luo. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes was like a pool of spring water, flowing into Yiqing Luo's heart. That scene was simply mesmerizing. Yiqing Luo's face in a flash turned red, as if it was on fire. Chapter 3975. Evildoer. An absolute evildoer. However, the evildoer who had seduced her would retract his demonic attitude after he had seduced her. Putting on a serious expression, he picked up the forgotten jade pendant and placed it in front of him. With just a glance, he threw the jade pendant on the table beside him. "This is my jade pendant, what's wrong? Do you know where it came from?" Yiqing Luo poked the jade pendant and raised her brows. "Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo hooked the jade pendant again and threw it into Dmo Xian's arms. "Shadowless City's mysterious maiden claimed to have a close relationship with you. This is the jade pendant you personally gave her." "Shadowless City's mysterious maiden?" Dmo Xian frowned slightly. "Who?" Yiqing Luo shrugged. "How would I know?" Dmo Xian carefully scrutinized the jade pendant, only feeling that it was somewhat familiar, but for a moment he couldn't recall when he had worn this jade pendant, not to mention who he had given this jade pendant to. Most importantly, did he look like someone who would give a jade pendant to others? She came all the way from Shadowless City to Without Embroiling City, holding a jade pendant, wanting to acknowledge you as her kin. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a teasing smile, her words were full of sarcasm. Don't know, no impression. Dmo Xian threw the jade pendant again and stretched out his arms to hug Yi Qing Luo. Jealous? There are so many women who admire you. If I were to be jealous of every one of them, would I be able to handle it? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes and leaned into his arms. Dmo Xian lifted a strand of her hair and laughed lowly. You have provoked quite a number of men, haven't I been busy too? Yi Qing Luo. It means that I have not provoked as many women as you have provoked. Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. So, you want to provoke more and make me too busy? Yi Qing Luo's little body shuddered. After meeting the man's gaze, she instantly became obedient. After being obedient, she felt that something was wrong. Wasn't she the one questioning Dmo Xian now? Why was she suppressed by him instead? Was she going to rebel? Did she still want to stand up for her wife? Yi Qing Luo immediately put on a straight face as she stretched out her hand to push him. Now I'm the one questioning you. What relationship do you have with that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Don't change the topic. Aren't you not jealous? Dmo Xian pinched her little face. Yi Qing Luo raised her head up high with a, I'm very angry, don't touch me expression. Jealousy is one thing, your jade pendant is in the hands of another woman, that's another matter. The smile in Dmo Xian's eyes deepened as his long and narrow peach blossom eyes hooked into a wavy arc, like a poppy blossoming. Isn't that simple? Let her explain personally how she got my jade pendant, wouldn't that be enough? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden kept on saying that she has a close relationship with you, so close that you even sat at the same table, discussing about poetry and life philosophy. I don't even know who the person is. How intimate do you think we can be? Dmo Xian loved this young lady who was obviously jealous but still pretended not to care. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. If Mu Qilan heard this sentence, her heart would probably be pierced to death. But she had to admit. This sentence made her feel great. But the pleasure wasn't over yet. The man suddenly lowered his voice as he leaned close to her ear. His low and hoarse voice was magnetic and alluring. It was like a little hook, gently teasing her heart. Furthermore, I only want to talk to you from poetry and life philosophy, too. He paused slightly as his voice became deeper. On the bed. Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3976. I'm serious. Yi Qing Luo tugged his wrist. Since you don't have any impression of her, then how did she get this jade pendant? Even if ordinary people wanted to steal your things, they wouldn't be able to do so, right? Dmo Xian held her body tightly and carried her all the way to the bed in the inner room. Then he sat on the bed and circled her from behind. This jade pendant looks familiar, but I haven't seen it for a long time. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed. Are you sure it's not a gift from you? After that, she raised her brows and looked up at him. Her slender fingers poked the man's chest. Did you give too many things to girls so you don't remember them clearly? Other than giving you a token of love. I have never given anything to anyone else. Dmo Xian rested his head on her shoulder as his low and hoarse voice rang beside her ear, very alluring. Yi Qing Luo snorted. But the next moment her body felt light. Her body was changed in another direction. Facing Dmo Xian. In her pupils, Dmo Xian's peerless and elegant countenance was reflected in her eyes. Her chin was clasped by the man's slender fingers. A head of black hair fell on Yi Qing Luo's face. He leaned over and leaned towards Yi Qing Luo. The distance between the two was so close that as long as they moved, their lips would touch. Dmo Xian then stopped his approach. The man's elegant sandalwood scent lingered in between her nostrils. Yi Qing Luo's chin was clasped by him, but she was unable to shift her gaze away. Just like that, when their eyes met, the man's thin lips curled up, the pampering and gentleness in his eyes seemed to be able to drown one in it. Still not admitting that you're jealous? Yi Qing Luo wanted to shake her head, but her chin was clasped by him so she could only blink her eyes. No? Before the word yes could leave her mouth, it was sealed by the man's thin lips. Just a little bit. He then left. I'll give you one more chance to answer. Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened. If she didn't admit that she was jealous, was he planning to keep kissing her until she admitted it? Taking advantage of her made it so open and aboveboard. There was no one else. Dmo Xian seemed as though he didn't notice the emotions in Yiqing Luo's eyes, as he didn't have any intention to let go of her. His eyes were still staring straight at her pink lips. He seemed to be waiting for her to admit that she was jealous. Forced by the man's tyrannical power, she gritted her teeth and glared at Dmo Xian as she said word by word, "Yes, I'm jealous." This time his manly heart was satisfied, right? However, as soon as she finished speaking, his body suddenly fell backwards. Her back was pressed against the soft bed. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he gave a devilish smile, in order to make it up to Lil Luo and to make Lil Luo assured. "So, I used my actions to prove that my heart, my body, all belong to you." Yiqing Luo, holy shit. In the end, his ultimate goal was to transform into a beast. The next day, the first thing Yiqing Luo did when she woke up was to kick the man off the bed. It was only after the kick that he realized what was going on. This was the first time she and Dmo Xian were sleeping on the same bed ever since they arrived at the Earth realm, and he was still by her side when she woke up. Dmo Xian, who was kicked onto the ground, was lying lazily on the ground. His underwear hung loosely, revealing his fair and muscular chest. A head of black hair spread out behind him. Early in the morning, that peerless face of his didn't have the usual stern look. On the contrary, it was extremely lazy. Chapter 3977. This scene had stimulated Yiqing Luo's eyes so early in the morning. Yiqing Luo only had one thought: your mother. Evildoer. It's early in the morning and Lil Luo is so energetic. Looks like Lil Luo is not satisfied with my performance last night. He laid on the ground, half propping himself up as he gave a lazy smile. When she woke up, the sound had not been turned on yet. The man's deep and hoarse voice was extremely magnetic and pleasant to the ears. Yiqing Luo's face turned red and green as she threw the pillow towards the man in embarrassment and anger. This pit. Dmo Xian had dug it once. She had also walked through it once. How could she fall into the pit for the second time? Whether she was satisfied or not, the ending was the same. Don't argue with a beast. Dmo Xian caught the pillow and with one hand he stood up lazily. That series of actions. His posture was lazy and elegant like a piece of art. Yiqing Luo tried her best to control her emotions. No matter how good-looking he was, it couldn't change his beast nature. Dmo Xian walked lazily to the bed and threw the pillow aside. Then in front of Yiqing Luo he took off his clothes. On that muscular back there were a few scratches. Yiqing Luo almost threw the pillow at him again. But after Dmo Xian took off his clothes, he slowly changed into his robes. His actions were a little flashy. But she had to admit, watching him take off and wear, it was rather pleasing to the eye. After Dmo Xian was dressed properly, his long arm hooked the red robe on the wooden rack onto his wrist. Then he bent over and carried Yiqing Luo up. Every time he tormented her badly. Dmo Xian used the method of serving her, to please her. Amen. But Yiqing Luo still shut her eyes as she enjoyed the man's service with a clear conscience. After breakfast, Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian to the treasure exchange. Yesterday the first auction of treasure gathering had ended. She had to go to the treasure exchange to check on Pei Xing and Gu Zixi situation. After the auction ended, Pei Xing should be heading over to the Heaven Realm. He didn't know how long Pei Xing and old man Huangfu had agreed to meet. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were walking towards the treasure exchange openly. They had yet to arrive at the treasure's exchange hall. The two of them attracted the attention of the crowd. They seemed to be discussing something, especially when she saw Dmo Xian by her side. Their gazes became even more erratic and gossipy. But after meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, everyone shifted their gazes in one direction at the same time. Yiqing Luo, what was going on? The answer to this question. After arriving at the treasures gathering exchange, Yiqing Luo understood, before he even got close to the treasure gathering. The arrogant voice of a woman came from inside. Since the treasures exchange hall is an exchange hall, then everyone who comes here is a guest. The moment we step into this place, we are the guests of treasure gathering. Is this how treasure gathering treats its guests? Yiqing Luo wasn't unfamiliar with that voice. Wasn't this the arrogant young lady whose wrist had been broken by her at the auction yesterday? This group of people actually ran to the treasures exchange hall? Did that mean that Mu Chulan was here as well? No wonder he had walked all the way here. the onlookers would look at them with such a strange expression. After all, Wuxialan's matter yesterday was considered to have blown up. Basically, most of the people had heard about the matter between Wuxialan and the Overlord. They were all guessing. What was the relationship between Wuxialan and the Overlord? And the source of that jade pendant? Now, the two main leads were about to meet. Chapter 3978. Yiqing Luo raised her slender brows meaningfully as she looked at Dmo Xian with a teasing look. Your little lover is here personally, how's the Overlord's mood? Dmo Xian's expression didn't change at all as his doting eyes looked at the person in his arms as his thin lips curled. What does Madame D think of my mood? Yiqing Luo raised her hand and caressed Dmo Xian's face. Her slender fingers caressed his contours bit by bit. Finally, it landed on his raised lips. Looks like the Overlord is very happy. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened. On his lips, the softness of her fingertips and the lady's fragrance filled his body and mind. That was all. But when the young lady looked at him with a light smile, she even deliberately curved her long and narrow eyes, making her look flirtatious and flirtatious. The fiery pink lips curled into a sexy and seductive arc. The tip of her pink tongue temptingly licked her pink lips. Dmo Xian's pupils shrank. His body was tight and taut. Both arms were about to press the young lady into his arms, to ease the surging feelings in his abdomen. But the young lady suddenly raised her hand and pushed him away. That bewitching expression. In a split second she became quick-witted. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with a teasing smile. Since the other party has sent themselves here, I shall wait quietly for the Overlord to give me a reasonable explanation. His arms were empty. Only the young lady's body fragrance was still lingering in his nose. Dmo Xian suddenly felt a sense of emptiness. He looked at the young lady skipping towards the door of the treasure house. That complacent look made him helplessly and dotingly shake his head with a light smile. Following that, he followed the young lady's footsteps. They just entered the treasure house. They saw a few ladies standing in the middle of the hall. They were arguing with Pei Xing about something. Wuxialan was still dressed in a white robe with a white veil as she stood behind the lady, as though she was isolated from the world. The surrounding wooden tables and chairs were all broken into pieces as they fell onto the ground in a mess. Even the counter was in a mess. This scene made Yiqing Luo's eyes sink slightly. Looked like these people had started to fight. Under the circumstances of knowing the power behind the treasure house, these ladies still dared to come over and create trouble. Could it be, did he confirm that he had a reliable backer? Ladies, the Treasures Gathering Trading House has already made it very clear at yesterday's auction. From today onwards, the Treasures Gathering Trading House will be closed for 3 months. Gu Zixi expression was unfriendly, but in order to maintain her image as a treasure trove, she suppressed her anger and explained. Pei Xing's expression darkened even further. Ladies, you barged into the gathering place of treasures without any explanation and started shouting and smashing the shop. I really can't tell how you ladies are like customers. Call that slut Yiqing Luo out. The arrogant young lady gritted her teeth. If you didn't feel guilty, why didn't you dare to call for help? Hey, you really think highly of yourself? It was just a plaything of His Majesty. He even dared to snatch the jade pendant given by the Overlord to Lady Mystic Fairy. Oh. The girls were cursing at the same time. His face was filled with arrogance. He didn't care about how many people from the various factions were outside the treasure gathering hall. His actions and the words he said were filled with confidence. Gu Zixi was so angry that she laughed. Who doesn't know that Luo is staying in the Qiao residence but came over to create trouble? You don't dare to offend the Qiao family, so you came over to the treasure gathering trading house? Do you think our treasure gathering is easy to bully? Boss Pei. The few ladies were still shouting when Wuxialan's calm voice rang. Chapter 3979. Wuxialan looked at Pei Xing calmly as her voice was calm. I just want Madame D to return the jade pendant to me. After all, that was given to me by the Overlord. The first gift has a deep meaning to me. She paused for a moment. Suddenly she raised her head. There was a slight ripple in her eyes. I hope you can persuade her on my behalf. After all, that belongs to someone else. Even if she snatched it away forcefully, it will not belong to her. This sentence had a hidden meaning. Anyone in the know could tell. Wuxialan's thing was not only referring to the jade pendant, but the Overlord, this person. Everyone's expression had a subtle change. The gaze they used to look at Wuxia was filled with probing and disbelief. She dared to openly imply that the overlord belonged to her. Could it be? Was there really something between her and the overlord? Otherwise, how would she dare to say that? After all, the overlord was in without embroiling city in the earth realm. If the mysterious young maiden's words were fake, the overlord would know in a minute. In everyone's heart, various thoughts were surging. Pei Xing and Gu Zishi exchanged glances as they frowned, unable to make up their minds. They naturally believed in the relationship between the overlord and Luo. But Wuxia, that solemn vow didn't seem like she was lying. Pfft. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice rang in the main hall. That laughter was as clear as a bell, extremely crisp. In an instant, everyone's gazes were focused on him. Following that, everyone saw the main entrance of the treasure exchange. Under the crowd, two figures walked in slowly. The young lady was dressed in red, peerlessly beautiful. The man was dressed in purple, peerlessly elegant. He instantly attracted everyone's attention. Almost glued to them, unable to shift away. The one who was laughing, wasn't it that red-robed lady? Yiqing Luo? When Wuxia saw Yiqing Luo, her pupils contracted. But very quickly, her gaze fell onto the man behind Yiqing Luo. The expression under the veil suddenly rose. Her eyes were filled with an excited smile. Following that, Wuxia flew forward and was about to jump into Diamo Xian's arms. Overlord. Before she got close, Wuxia was sent flying by an invisible force. Her delicate body fell heavily to the ground. She cried out in pain as she laid weakly on the ground. Raising her head, she looked at Diamo Xian in disbelief. Dizun? Her beautiful eyes were filled with hurt and disbelief. She could not believe that Diamo Xian would treat her like this. Diamo Xian met with Wuxia's hurt expression and frowned slightly. His expression was indifferent and even the words he spoke were extremely cold. Who are you? These three words immediately caused thousands of waves to splash. Sounds of people sucking in cold air could be heard in the surroundings. Wuxia was completely stunned as she stared at Diamo Xian in shock, unable to regain her senses for a long time. When the other arrogant young misses heard this, they were stunned. His confident face instantly turned pale. Wuxia's heart skipped a beat, and she abruptly raised her hand to remove the veil covering her face. Lord Dizun, it's me. It's me, I'm your Lan. When the woman's veil fell, it revealed a peerlessly beautiful face. That face was absolutely much more beautiful than Xiao Yulu by 3 times. Although she looked around 17 or 18 years old. But her brows were filled with a mature lady's charm. Gentle and dignified, with a myriad of amorous and flirtatious styles. Chapter 3980. Yiqing Luo expressed. She was a man. She would also be attracted by this beauty. She didn't know why Xiao Yulu was so confident that she was the most beautiful person in the world. They were all from Linglong Palace. Could it be that when they were at Linglong Palace, Xiao Yulu and Wuxia had never met before? Feeling the surrounding shocked and infatuated gazes, as well as the exclamations, Wuxia's eyes flashed past a glint of complacency. She disdained to use this face of hers to achieve any motive. But it was a lady's nature to love beauty. To be able to see so many people exclaiming in admiration because of her beauty. Naturally, it satisfied her vanity. As for Yiqing Luo? Wuxia shot a disdainful glance at Yiqing Luo. What men liked was her pure and flirtatious face. Unlike Yiqing Luo's aloof feeling no matter where and no matter what. A lady like Yiqing Luo would at most arouse men's desire to conquer her. Once conquered, they would lose interest. Did she really think that she was the woman whom the overlord deeply loved? Didn't she like to be high up, to be looked up to by others? Now, let her, in front of all the big shots from the surrounding forces, pull Yiqing Luo down from her self-righteous altar. Wuxia's lips curled upwards with some complacency and some contempt. But her voice and words were so gentle, making one feel pity for her. Overlord. Dino, Imperial Madam is too much. She made use of your favor to snatch away the jade pendant which you gave me, and even asked me to ask you to help me get it back. That sweet voice and that gentle and flirtatious expression. It was totally different from her earlier, pretending to be an elegant, profound maiden, totally different. Everyone's gazes turned towards Diamo Xian, waiting for Diamo Xian's reaction. Their hearts were tightly tensed up. Watching the show, they were all extremely nervous. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she looked at the scene in front of her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She didn't stop, nor did she have any intention to question. Just like the others who were watching the show. Under everyone's gazes. The silent Dmo Xian slightly raised his head as his indifferent gaze, like still water, fell onto Mu Qiulan's face. He was expressionless. She really couldn't tell his emotions. After that, Dmo Xian's fingers moved slightly and a piece of jade pendant appeared in his hand. Mu Qiulan's eyes lit up as she stood up ecstatically and pounced towards Dmo Xian. Right? It's this jade pendant. Overlord Lan knows that you love Lan the most. You really got the jade pendant back for Lan? She threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms. He even shot a complacent look towards Yi Qingluo's direction. However, history was always strikingly similar. Mu Qiulan pounced. Once again he was sent flying. Mu Qiulan coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. The onlookers were dumbfounded. Then he looked at Di Zun's expression. He was so calm and indifferent that he didn't have the slightest emotion, even when he was looking at Mu Qiulan. In their eyes, there was no such person as Mu Qiulan. After that, Dmo Xian appeared in front of everyone's eyes. He clenched his fist. When he opened his palm again, the powder of the broken jade floated on the ground. He destroyed the jade pendant. He directly crushed it into powder. This action made Mu Qiulan's face instantly turn pale as her pair of eyes stared intently at the scattered powder. The surrounding people were all stunned. What did the Overlord mean by this? Why did he crush that piece of jade pendant? Chapter 3981. Mu Qiulan's heart suddenly tightened and she pressed her hand against her chest. Lord Divine Lord you, how could you? Tisk tisk. Yi Qingluo crossed her arms in front of her chest as she raised her eyebrows and looked at Dmo Xian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Look at how badly you've hurt the young lady. Why did you even destroy the jade pendant? Dirty. Dmo Xian replied. It was just a single word, but it pierced Mu Qiulan's heart like a needle. Her pupils constricted. The hand pressing on his heart was also tightening. Slightly pausing for a moment, Dmo Xian opened his mouth and continued, other than you, things that have been touched are all dirty. The crowd was instantly in an uproar. This time the Overlord's attitude was clear. For Madame D, she even crushed her own jade pendant. This meant that the Emperor's wife was still the most important to the Overlord. Lord Di Zun, is it because of her that you refuse to acknowledge me? Mu Qiulan's voice was trembling. His eyes reddened. Her tears flickered and she was about to cry. Her appearance caused many of the men present to feel heartache. Just as the crowd was about to speak up for Mu Qiulan, a voice suddenly rang out. Mu Qiulan clenched her fists tightly and slowly pushed herself up to her feet. That petite body was delicate and weak. When he stood up he even swayed a few times. After he stood firm, she clenched her fists and raised her head slightly. A determined look appeared on her face that was on the verge of tears. She squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath. After that, he opened his eyes and stared at Dmo Xian as he spat out every single word. It's my wishful thinking, it's my fault. Overlord, you can punish me however you want. After saying that, she closed her eyes powerlessly, as if she had no intention of resisting at all. But these words, it sounded very strange. Dmo Xian's brows creased slightly. These words were indeed strange. It was as if her heart had already died. It was as if she was willing to bear all the grievances for the man she loved. The more it was like this, the more it seemed, what kind of secret did she have with Dmo Xian? This move was indeed brilliant. Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards as her smile deepened. He had to admit it. Mu Qiulan did have some brains. She did this. She was afraid that everyone would treat Dmo Xian as a scumbag? What do you mean by I can punish him however I want? You took out a jade pendant out of nowhere and said that you had a close relationship with the Overlord. You even made it seem like you and the Overlord. Pei Xing couldn't take it anymore. She frowned and said unhappily. But when she said the last sentence she was a little embarrassed. She gritted her teeth and continued, you used the name of the Overlord to swindle people. Even if you're the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City, you'll have to pay the price for this. Otherwise, in the future, will anyone be able to claim that they have a close relationship with His Majesty? Mu Qiulan's body stiffened, her face like dead ashes. Her pitiful eyes looked deeply at Pei Xing. Following that, it returned to Dmo Xian. His eyes were filled with attachment and gentleness. Whatever the Overlord says, is what it is. I have no intention of defending myself. Pei Xing was so angry that his face was trembling. What kind of words were those? Mu Qilan was obviously doing this on purpose. Chapter 3982. Gu Zixi words were what everyone was thinking, saying it out in the open. Saying it out in the open. On the contrary, it seemed that Mu Qilan was doing it on purpose. That's right. Did the Overlord need a woman to compromise for him? If the Overlord really had something with her, did he need to be so secretive? Just look at the Overlord and the Imperial Madam, showing off their affection. The Overlord was not the kind of person who liked to hide. Even if it was for the Imperial Madam. It was not to the extent that he didn't dare to admit that he had a relationship with a woman. He was the Overlord. So what if he really had a few women by his side? So, the Overlord really didn't need that. Gu Zixi continued, rather than using this method to try to avoid punishment, why not explain clearly the origin of that jade pendant? As if mentioning the reason of the jade pendant. Mu Qilan's eyes suddenly flashed, staring at the scattered jade powder, her fists clenched even tighter. She suddenly raised her eyes and stared at Diamo Xian, her voice trembling, the origin of the jade pendant. The Overlord knows it better than anyone. Diamo Xian's eyes were cold and indifferent, meeting Mu Qilan's gaze. That indifferent emotion without the slightest fluctuation. It was just a few breaths of time. Mu Qilan lowered her head in fear. Her delicate body, trembling uncontrollably. Her thoughts were tumbling, she was furious and aggrieved. But in the end she still clenched her fists tightly, squeezing out a sentence between her teeth. Since the Overlord is unwilling to admit Lan has nothing else to say. Immediately after, she put on an expression of waiting to be trampled upon. Everyone. They all pricked up their ears and held their breath, wanting to listen to gossip about this jade pendant. Why did it reach the tip of her tongue? She swallowed it back again? Why is he putting on this compromising look again? Can't we just gossip happily? Everyone was very impatient. Gu Zixi also frowned, she didn't expect this mysterious fairy to be so stubborn. She was so thick-skinned to this extent. Until now, she still insisted that she was having an affair with the Overlord. This kind of behavior. It lasted. It would still make some people feel that. Mu Qilan was really compromising. After all, this was in front of His Majesty. If this thing is fake. Mu Qilan should have been scared out of her wits by now. The few of them frowned deeply, thinking of a way to pry open Mu Qilan's mouth. After a moment of silence. A clear and melodious laughter broke the silence. The young girl's laughter was clear and melodious, like pearls and jade falling on a plate. I've had a question since yesterday. The corners of the young girl's mouth curled up into a faint smile, making her look even more beautiful. How can you prove that the jade pendant was given to you by Xian? After saying that, she placed her slender fingers on her chin. Based on my understanding, if Xian had really given you the jade pendant personally, there's no way he wouldn't admit it. After all, with his status, is there a need to deny it? Mu Qilan's pupils constricted abruptly, and her fists clenched even tighter. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with jealousy and hatred. It was as if he had really suffered a huge grievance. Because of her existence. Diamo Xian didn't dare to acknowledge her. That expression made Yiqing Luo almost give birth to a kind of illusion that what Mu Qilan said was the truth. Yiqing Luo trusted Diamo Xian a lot. And absolutely trusted Diamo Xian. Chapter 3983. Why was it that in front of Diamo Xian, Mu Qilan was so sure that she indeed had an affair with Diamo Xian? When Mu Qilan heard Yiqing Luo's words, she only raised her eyelids and looked straight at Yiqing Luo. After a few breaths, she laughed softly. Her laughter was filled with bitterness. Other than the Overlord, who else can prove it for me? Her eyes overflowed with a bitter smile. Since the Overlord has already chosen you, then? If you want to kill or torture me, it's up to you. Why do you have to intentionally humiliate me? At this point, the corners of her lips twitched mockingly. Didn't the Imperial Madam look down on me? Why is it that now you're trying to find an excuse to deny my existence? Should I rejoice that the current me is able to enter your eyes? Mu Qilan's words, tone and expression were all too real. The surrounding people were all in a daze. They didn't know who to believe. Although they knew logically that the Overlord had no need to lie. But when they saw Mu Qilan, they only felt that Mu Qilan had really suffered too much grievance. It made it seem that Yiqing Luo was being overbearing. You. Suddenly, just as everyone was feeling different. The Overlord, who didn't even bother to look Mu Qilan straight in the eye, and couldn't even be bothered to speak to Mu Qiulan, spoke out. It was just one word. Everyone's attention was drawn over to him. Dmo Xian just raised his eyes. That indifferent handsome side view was very nice. Especially those deep eyes like a deep abyss as though it was going to swallow one up. It gave one a kind of unattainable, unapproachable pressure. Everyone's hearts uncontrollably clenched tightly, stuck at their throats, unable to go down nor up. It was very uncomfortable. It's up to us if you want to kill or torture us. His voice was extremely indifferent, without any fluctuation of emotions. Mu Qiulan looked at that face which she yearned for day and night, looking at the overlord's aloof and indifferent face. Her heart felt like it was being torn into pieces. Dmo Xian's fingers moved as an invisible pressure pressed down, using this kind of nonsense to sow discord between me and Lil Luo. You deserve to die. His deep cold voice seemed to be able to freeze the air. Mu Qiulan screamed in pain, rolling on the ground. However, the invisible pressure made her unable to resist at all. Only Mu Qiulan's painful howls could be heard throughout the entire treasure exchange hall. Everyone was terrified. She was even more fearful of Dmo Xian's power. They didn't even see the overlord move. He merely glanced at the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City. Shadowless City's Empyrean Fairy fell to the ground, powerless to struggle. Just how deep was his profound strength and inner energy to be able to reach such a level? Anyone with a discerning eye could tell. Dizun was furious. Dizun was furious. The big shots of the major forces present did not even dare to breathe loudly. Not to mention, those who originally had the intention to speak up for Mu Qiulan had also given up on the idea. But, at this critical juncture, some people did not dare to speak. If someone didn't speak up, they would really die. For example, Mu Qiulan's several daughters who had always been by her side. They knew it very well. Once Mu Qiulan fell. Next it was their turn. Chapter 3984. Overlord, Lord Mystic Fairy is your woman after all. Even if you love that slut, love Imperial Madam a little more, you can't treat Lord Mystic Fairy in this way. Obviously last night you and Lord Mystic Fairy were so lovey-dovey. Why now? You pretend not to know Lord Mystic Fairy. Your Majesty, you're a legend that everyone respects. You obviously have a deep relationship with Lord Mystic Fairy, but you intentionally deny it and even tried to silence her. Are you really worthy of the Overlord's honorific? A few young misses wailed and shouted. They even threw themselves beside Mu Qiulan. Just as those young ladies were pouncing towards Mu Qiulan, Dmo Xian's arrogance was slightly retracted. He didn't continue to use his might to oppress Mu Qiulan. That continuous accusation had completely shaped him into a scumbag's image. More and more people were crowding around them. This gossip was getting more and more exciting. Listening to those young ladies' accusations, all of them were stunned. Could it be? Overlord was really related to Shadowless City's Lord Mystic Fairy? Everyone's suspicious and suspicious gazes. It made Dmo Xian extremely frustrated. If he were to directly kill someone over this matter, there would definitely be other gossips saying that he was guilty. Explanation. A few mouths had already turned black and white upside down. He couldn't be bothered to explain anything. He only cared about. Surely Lil Luo, wouldn't have really misunderstood him, right? Xian. Just as he was thinking about this, he heard a young lady's voice. Dmo Xian's cold eyes converged, and when he looked at Yiqing Luo, his expression was filled with tenderness. Lil Luo, The explanation was at the tip of his tongue. But it was stopped by the young lady's gaze. The young lady's face was no longer that leisurely expression of watching the show earlier, but had a solemn expression. Her slender brows creased slightly as she walked slowly to Dmo Xian's side. Xian, they don't seem to be lying. Dmo Xian's long arms suddenly hugged the young lady in his arms as his expression was anxious. Lil Luo, they and I are absolutely. I believe you. Yiqing Luo's index finger pressed against Dmo Xian's lips as she curled her lips at him. My man, I naturally believe you. Dmo Xian, then, you mean? Yiqing Luo's brows drooped slightly as a ray of brilliance flashed past her eyes. She pushed Dmo Xian's chest away and looked anxiously at the young ladies who were curled up into a ball on the ground. Earlier you said last night, Xian and your mysterious maiden were still in love? Yiqing Luo looked at them, intentionally revealing a suspicious expression. Earlier Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's voices were extremely soft. The young ladies only saw Yiqing Luo pushing Dmo Xian away and questioning them. Immediately he felt a little more confident and proud in his heart. That's right. Last night, we saw with our own eyes that His Majesty carried Lady Mystic Fairy into the guest room. The young ladies were still unmarried. When she said this she was a little shy. However, the target was Dizun. Their pride was greater than their shyness. Carrying the Empyrean Fairy into the guest room? A man and a woman entering a room alone, what else could happen? After finishing this sentence, the arrogant woman's confidence surged up as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Yesterday you went to the auction alone and His Majesty wasn't by your side. In actual fact, His Majesty had been waiting to meet our mysterious maiden. Chapter 3985. In the face of the ridicule from the young misses, Yi Zichen didn't say anything. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She only waited for them to finish their words before she calmly asked, "Are you sure it was last night?" "Of course it was last night." The arrogant lady sneered coldly, "Relying on the fact that you are the acknowledged woman of the Overlord, you forcefully snatched away the jade pendant which the Overlord had gifted to Mysterious Fairy. The Overlord naturally had to comfort Mysterious Fairy tonight." Saying that, she laughed delightfully, as though she was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for shooting herself in the foot, thinking that she had bullied Mu Qiulan using her official position. In the end, she pushed the Overlord towards Mu Qiulan. The arrogant lady was waiting for Yiqing Luo to fly into a rage, waiting for her to go berserk. But after laughing for some time, she didn't see any signs of Yiqing Luo going berserk. Her devastatingly beautiful face had an indifferent expression and the smile on her lips had some traces of ridicule. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly, her imposing manner was pressing. It made one's heart tighten unknowingly, giving birth to an appalled look. She stood beside Diamo Xian, totally not suppressed by Diamo Xian's imposing manner. One had to admit, she was indeed compatible with Diamo Xian. The arrogant lady was shocked. She kept back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. The expression on her face also froze. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she scoffed softly, laughing lightly with some hints of ridicule. Then, "How are you so sure that the person you saw is Xian? Last night?" Last night, her man had been on her bed. Not to mention her trust towards Diamo Xian. Just based on theory. Although her man's battle power was very strong after he turned into a beast. But last night, her man had tormented her till she fainted. How could he possibly have the energy to run over to Mu Qiulan's side, to have another night with her? Even if a beast was a beast. But he was still a human. The few ladies' expressions changed instantly as they exchanged glances and their voices started to float. Even if we didn't see his face, but we also know that is the Overlord. At least we saw the Overlord's side face and back view. Even if we didn't see it, but Mysterious Fairy and the Overlord are on the same bed. Don't tell me he's mistaken. Your Majesty, last night you told us personally that you would definitely support Lady Empyrean Fairy. Listening to their conversation, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. She glanced sideways and bumped Diamo Xian's arm. Looks like someone is rather daring. Knowing that you're in the Earth realm, he still dares to impersonate you right under your nose. Are you surprised? He was right. Impersonate. Diamo Xian had always been by her side. Then the Lord Dizun, who appeared on Mu Qiulan's side. It must be fake. Someone actually dared to impersonate Diamo Xian? Even if he had disguised himself to look like Diamo Xian, wouldn't it be hard to imitate Diamo Xian's temperament? To be able to impersonate Diamo Xian and make Mu Qiulan trust him without a doubt. Who could it be? Impersonation? What do you mean? Madame D said that someone is impersonating His Majesty? In other words, the Overlord who is related to the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City is a fake? No way. How could anyone dare to impersonate Dizun? Do you think it's that easy to impersonate Dizun? How could this be possible? Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't considered soft at all. Those big shots who were nearer heard it clearly. Chapter 3986. Impersonating Diamo Xian was a big deal. Especially when Diamo Xian was still in the Earth realm, to impersonate him. Was he trying to throw his life away? Of course, there were also many who doubted the authenticity of this statement. Furthermore, they felt that this was an excuse that Yiqing Luo was trying to salvage Diamo Xian's image. The spectators all had their own guesses and thoughts. Yiqing Luo and Dimo Xian didn't bother about him. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly as she gazed deeply at Mu Qiulan for some time before opening her mouth. Shadowless City's mysterious young lady, can you confirm that the person who shared the same bed with you last night is the Overlord? Mu Qiulan had an ugly expression on her face. She clenched her fists tightly and spat out a few words through gritted teeth. I'm not so bad that I would mistake someone for someone else. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. In other words, she had admitted that she had slept with the Overlord last night. Understanding it was one thing. It was a completely different feeling to hear the person personally admit it. Mu Qiulan's infatuated gaze swept past Dimo Xian. Her body moved slightly. His slightly disheveled coat slid off his shoulders. Her fair shoulders and her neck, which was covered by her fine black hair, revealed a mottled scar. That was obviously, it was the mark left behind by a man. I also know that there's a scar on the back of Lord Dizun's waist. Mu Qiulan raised her neck as if she was showing off, exposing the marks on his body to Yiqing Luo. Moreover, her gaze was infatuated as she looked at Dimo Xian's body seductively. Defensive back? That was a rather private spot. The mysterious fairy of the Shadowless City was actually able to accurately pinpoint that location? Could it be? Everyone's vision immediately shot towards Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo's expression was still calm without any ripples of emotions, as though she totally didn't put Mu Qiulan's words to heart. She tilted her head, raised her eyes, and smiled wickedly. Everyone held their breaths as they waited anxiously for Yiqing Luo's reply. Was it an admission? Or denied? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yiqing Luo's pink lips parted slightly as she spat out a word, "Oh." What kind of answer was that? Also, now that he was her backer, he might be having an affair with another woman. How could she still smile so calmly? For a moment, the crowd really couldn't see through what Yiqing Luo was thinking. He also could not figure out whether Mu Qiulan's words were true or not. Mu Qiulan's flaunting expression also froze on her face. There was a sense of powerlessness as if he was punching cotton. There was also a sense of inferiority that came from being looked down upon. Yes, inferiority complex. She was from a prestigious family and had a close relationship with the Dizun. She had a distinguished status. Standing in front of Yiqing Luo, he should be full of confidence. However, she had a sense of inferiority that even she could not control. From Yiqing Luo she could feel. Yiqing Luo totally disregarded her. Everything she had done was like a clown jumping on a beam. Everyone's different gazes were still on Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo continued, "Since you are sure that you have an affair with the Overlord, then I can only fulfill your wish." Everyone? What kind of development was this? Why couldn't their brains keep up? Was Lady Emperor planning to accept the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City? Was he going to make the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City a concubine of the Overlord? Since when did Madame D become so easy to talk to? Not only were the crowd filled with puzzlement. Chapter 3987. Fulfill her wish? Fulfill Mu Qiulan's wish? Was this the Yiqing Luo they knew? Absolutely not. The Yiqing Luo they knew, if they ascertained that what Mu Qiulan said was the truth, she would definitely chop this pair of adulterous couple into pieces with a single slash. How could she possibly fulfill her wish with a smile? Looking at Yiqing Luo's devilish smile, Pei Sheng and the rest all started to shiver. So scary, so scary. A smiling Luo was really scary. Mu Qiulan apparently hadn't understood the meaning behind Yiqing Luo's words. After Missy reminded her softly, she looked at Yiqing Luo suspiciously. She didn't feel that Yiqing Luo would be so kind-hearted. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her narrow eyes squinted. The expression on her face was extremely indifferent, not looking like she was joking or angry. What? Not willing? She raised her brows as she asked with a smile. Mu Qiulan's eyes changed. It wasn't that she didn't agree, but she couldn't believe Yiqing Luo's generosity. Yiqing Luo's smile remained unchanged as she stretched out her hand and hooked onto Dimo Xian's arm as her voice was extremely clear. "Since you're not willing, I won't force you." Immediately, she pulled Dimo Xian as she turned around and left. No. Mu Qiulan cried out anxiously. She was in a hurry to speak out and chase after them. She had just stood up. It affected the internal injury which was caused by Dimo Xian earlier as she spat out a large mouthful of blood. Mu Qiulan choked on the blood as she kept coughing. Her white robe was splattered all over. She was in a sorry state and dirty. Mu Qilan was so angry that her face turned red. In front of her beloved man, she revealed such an unbearable scene. As though her own perfect image had been completely shattered. This was Yiqing Luo's motive? Intentionally pretending to be generous to fulfill her wish. Making her think that this was a plot. From then to openly express that this was an opportunity for her, Mu Qilan to reject it herself. Thinking of using this method to chase her away from the overlord? Don't even think about it. Mu Qilan tried her best to calm her twisted expression as she gritted her teeth in anger. I'm willing. As long as I can be with His Majesty, I'm willing to be a servant. Deske. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. It's really touching. The high and mighty mysterious maiden of Shadowless City is willing to be a servant. I wonder if Linglong Palace will regret nurturing you. Mu Qilan was half kneeling on the ground, panting heavily. And Yiqing Luo stood in front of her. When he said this, his attitude was so high and mighty. His words were particularly ear-piercing. Mu Qilan's eyes were bloodshot, but when she saw Diamo Xian by the side, she bit her lower lip hard, suppressing the surging anger in her chest. My feelings for the overlord? I can give up everything, including my current position. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue again. So touching. She paused for a moment. Then, the corners of her mouth twitched into a smile. Her long and narrow eyes rippled slightly. Go back first. Go back. Mu Qilan was stunned. Could it be that she wasn't going to be brought to the Qiao Manor to be with the Lord Overlord? Are you intending to use this image to follow us? Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze swept across Mu Qilan from head to toe, her face filled with smiles. Mu Qilan's face turned red. I know. Looking at the few young ladies supporting Mu Qilan as they left the treasure gathering. The surrounding crowd had yet to regain their senses. Chapter 3988. Yiqing Luo tilted her head and took a look at Diamo Xian. Her smile didn't diminish. What else can I do? Are you really going to kill her? Wasn't it said that the person with the Empyrean Maiden of Shadowless City was an imposter? Pei Xing was also very puzzled. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers stroked her chin as her eyes were filled with smiles. But where's the evidence? Pei Xing choked. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Yeah, where's the evidence? Without any evidence, he insisted that the Lord Overlord Mu Qilan had seen was an imposter. Who would believe that? But did he really have to admit that the woman was Lord Dizun's woman? Pei Xing and the rest couldn't believe it. The overlord who treated Yiqing Luo so well, so gentle no matter how one looked at it, would be with another woman. Moreover, this morning Yiqing Luo and the overlord had obviously arrived at the treasure gathering place together. This meant that the overlord was by Yiqing Luo's side last night. Pei Xing panicked. Overlord, aren't you going to explain this to Luo? Diamo Xian's eyes were tranquil and there was not the slightest trace of emotion on his indifferent handsome face. There wasn't any ripple in his eyes as he faintly glanced at Pei Xing, and following that, his vision returned back to Yiqing Luo. He had no intention of answering Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo still had her arms crossed over her chest with a smile on her face. From the corner of his eyes, he seemed to have seen something. The smile at the corner of his mouth had a deeper meaning to it. Her slender fingers, bit by bit, stroked Diamo Xian's back. Finally, it landed somewhere behind his waist. There is indeed a scar on the back of his waist. This scar. She did. It had been a long time. Yiqing Luo had never asked about the origin of this scar. After all, they were legendary figures that everyone talked about. To climb to his current position. The effort he had put in was not something an ordinary person could imagine. It was normal to have wounds of various sizes on one's body. The young girl's casual words made the surrounding people gasp in disbelief. Pei Xing and the others were stunned as well. There was indeed a scar on the back of the overlord's waist? In other words, Mu Qilan was right. In other words, was Mu Qilan's words true? Did the overlord really betray Luo? Luo. Pei Xing frowned. He still wanted to say something, but Gu Zixi grabbed his arm. Gu Zixi shook her head at Pei Xing, signaling him to stop talking. Pei Xing's mouth was wide open, and then he slowly closed it. Looking at the two people in front of him, one was indifferent, the other was smiling like a flower, but his entire body was cold. It felt like the eunuchs were anxious when the emperor wasn't. He really couldn't figure out what Yiqing Luo was thinking about. Looking at the shocked and worried looks on the faces of the people in front of him, Zhang Xian frowned. Yiqing Luo laughed. Don't mind it too much. If Mu Qiulan really wants to become Overlord's woman in the open, it won't be that easy. Her words had a hidden meaning. However, Pei Sheng and the rest could not understand the deeper meaning behind her words. Although you all plan to go to the Earth Realm, everything in this treasure trove as well as this land are filled with memories. Yiqing Luo didn't continue talking about Mu Qiulan's thoughts but changed the topic. Tidy up the treasure gathering then. Go look for Shadowless City's mysterious young lady and ask for whatever compensation you deserve. Chapter 3989. Under Gu Zixi's hint. Pei Sheng didn't say anything in the end. He listened to Yiqing Luo's words and went to clean up the hall which was smashed by Mu Qiulan and the rest. But his mood was obviously gloomy. From time to time he would look at Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. Such a thing had happened. Pei Sheng wasn't in the mood to leave for the Heaven Realm immediately. Yiqing Luo took a look at the crowd and didn't say a word as she turned and left the place. Dmo Xian chased after her. The moment the two left, the entire place was in an uproar. All kinds of discussions were heard. When the person involved was still around, they didn't dare to make a sound. The gossip and doubts accumulated in the bottom of their hearts could finally be vented at this time. In just a moment's time, almost the entire without embroiling city already knew about this matter. Moreover, most of them guessed that Mu Qiulan's words might be true. After all, didn't Madame D personally admit that there was indeed a scar on the back of the Overlord's waist? Yiqing Luo returned to the Qiao residence at lightning speed. Just as she entered the courtyard, her delicate body was hooked by Dmo Xian's long arm. She was forcefully pressed into the man's arms. Dmo Xian's low and hoarse voice rang in her ear. Are you really angry? Do I look angry? Yiqing Luo didn't struggle as she leaned into the man's arms and raised her head slightly. The man at this time in front of outsiders, that indifferent and noble aura had been completely restrained. Lowering his head, his dark deep eyes met with the young lady's gaze. That face was so handsome that it made people fascinated. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes moved as her lips rose. Why? Are you feeling guilty? Using the handsome man trick? Dmo Xian leaned his face closer. I only used the handsome man trick on you. Yiqing Luo snorted as she raised her hand and pinched his face. The young lady's angry look made Dmo Xian couldn't help but laugh. He hugged the young lady tightly and rested his head on her shoulder. I know you feel uncomfortable. I will investigate this matter clearly. So what if you investigate clearly? I'm already green with envy. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly. Her tone seemed to be angry, but she had no intention of breaking free from the man's embrace. Who knows which day I will catch you in bed? Only you will be on my bed. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. He knew that her anger was not because he really had anything to do with Mu Qiulan. There were some things that didn't need to be explained. If Yiqing Luo really believed Mu Qiulan's words, otherwise she wouldn't be standing in front of him so calmly and talking so much with Mu Qiulan. But this kind of thing, even if he believed it, they would also feel uncomfortable in their hearts. No one would wish for their beloved to have inexplicable rumors and slanders with others. Be good, it's my fault. It's my fault. I gave someone a chance to impersonate me and made little Luo unhappy. Dmo Xian bent down and kissed her lips. He looked at her with his deep eyes. His voice was exceptionally deep. In order to make amends before the truth comes to light, I'll agree to any of your requests, okay? Yiqing Luo's slender brows suddenly rose, her eyes filled with a complacent expression. However, he pretended to be serious. Whatever I say, that's what it is. Yes, yes, yes. Dmo Xian coaxed in a soft voice. Yiqing Luo nodded her head satisfactorily and put on a generous look. But since you've raised this request so sincerely, I can only be merciful and satisfy you. Chapter 3990. Dmo Xian's attitude softened. Can we change to another one? No. Yiqing Luo raised her head arrogantly. Didn't you say that you will agree to any of my requests? You're going back on your words now? Dmo Xian put on a pitiful expression. Can't we discuss this further? No. Yiqing Luo replied decisively. Dmo Xian sighed helplessly as he leaned his head back onto her neck and sighed softly. In order to make Lil Luo happy, I can only wrong my little Xian Xian. Little Xian Xian? This form of address made Yiqing Luo's goosebumps rose. She shook herself as she raised her hand and hammered his chest. These few days she had been tormented badly by DMO Xian. In this short period of time, she absolutely could not let DMO Xian torment her again. If this carried on, she would be spoiled sooner or later. Wu asked him to propose to agree to any of her requests unconditionally. This opportunity must not be missed. She must stop DMO Xian from acting like a beast again. DMO Xian laid on her shoulder as he saw the gleam in the young lady's eyes and that complacent look. His thin lips curled upwards as his gaze was gentle and filled with pampering. He naturally knew what Yiqing Luo was thinking about. Originally, he didn't intend to torment her for this period of time. After all these few days, he had indeed tormented her badly. DMO Xian laughed lightly as he leaned close to her lips and gave it a light peck. This made the young lady grumble and pouted coquettishly as she pushed him, muttering, "Didn't I say not to touch me? This kind of action is also prohibited." DMO Xian only laughed. His deep laughter was right beside her ear. It was very magnetic. "Tonight, let's go catch the traitor, together." Yiqing Luo was stunned as she raised her head to look at him. She seemed to be astonished that he knew what she was thinking about. DMO Xian pinched her nose. "Earlier at the gathering of treasures, you and that young lady, as well as what you said after that, isn't it to prepare for tonight?" Yiqing Luo was astonished. In front of DMO Xian she really had no secrets at all. He indeed wasn't wrong. At the gathering of treasures, what she said to Mu Qiulan, and after that she intentionally admitted that DMO Xian had a scar on his back, as though she believed Mu Qiulan's words. Actually, it was to lure the snake out. Tonight he would take His Majesty to catch His Majesty's traitor. Night. At mealtime. It was rare for Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian to appear in Patriarch Qiao's banquet. There were also about 7 or 8 big shots from other forces around. When they saw Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian appearing, their expressions were all different. The entire dining atmosphere was very strange. Yiqing Luo's mood was obviously not high, and when she faced DMO Xian, her attitude wasn't very good. On the other hand, DMO Xian would occasionally help Yiqing Luo to prepare the dishes and whisper from time to time. But Yiqing Luo had brushed them off in public. In the second half of the court, DMO Xian flicked his sleeves and left. Patriarch Qiao was stunned. The big shots at the side did not dare to speak. Everyone could see that. This couple was still throwing a tantrum because of Mu Qiulan's matter. Patriarch Qiao looked at the direction where DMO Xian left as he suppressed his voice, trying to persuade Yiqing Luo, "Madam Emperor, the overlord don't bother about him, do whatever you like." Yiqing Luo waved her hand as if she didn't mind, but her expression was obviously not good. After eating a few more chopsticks, she stood up and bade farewell to Patriarch Qiao and the other big shots, leaving the main hall. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.